Hello folks and welcome to our game here this morning with myself, Shane Phillips, and joined as ever by Michael Verney and brought to you by OurGame.com. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. There are some amount of brilliant jerseys to be had there, including zip-up tops. Also, if you want to get a live GA club fundraiser done at your club, email events@ourgame.ie. We'll sort that out for you. Also, if you want to get the audio podcast, visit patreon.com/OurGame. Michael Verney, that's a tasty little Limerick zip-up you have there.
Very tasty, and they're going to be wearing it for another while yet this summer. The Wexford lads won't be wearing that jersey, but I'm sure they're happy men this morning. And you might flick off the music there, Shane. I know we want to keep going into the Monday morning, but with Jesus, like, was there ever a hurling day like we had yesterday? It was
absolutely brilliant.
It was something else, and just like I was sitting outside the church in Thurles watching the first half of Tipp and Galway in the car, and then they went into the grounds, and we were hearing what was going on in Wexford Park, and we were hearing about what was going on in Cusack Park, and then it was in Thurles covering Tipp and Waterford, and the telly's over there in Limerick and Cork, and you can hear everything. Like, it was just an absolutely bananas day, and I'd say it's probably the greatest advertisement for hurling within that 4-hour period from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Like, you won't get a better advertisement. It was just, and even the fact that RT were bringing up scores and updates from the other grounds and updated tables, and it had a real final day feel to it. Like, I'd imagine when the round robin was put in place, that's exactly what they wanted yesterday. Every game having something at stake. And like, I was in Thurles, and at halftime you're looking like, if it stays the way it is, Tipperary are out of the championship. Like, it was just bonkers. There was so many things going on in different directions. It was a crazy, crazy day.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. And like 2019, that Leinster finale, that was something else where Galway ended up being the odd ones out. But yesterday, yeah, I was sweating it there at one stage, I have to admit. I was in watching Galway and Dublin. So we've got every angle covered this weekend. I was at Galway, Dublin. You were all over the Joe Mack final. You were at Tipperary, Waterford. We've got Niall Moore, and of course, former Limerick star. He'll be talking to us about the Cork Limerick game. And we've got Nikki Brennan coming in as well to talk about Wexford getting victory over Kilkenny and saving their bacon as well. Truly a dramatic weekend. Antrim beat Westmeath as well. So Westmeath, unfortunately, after the heroics of the round before, they're gone out. But the main thing is, we've got the matchup that every OurGame supporter and follower wanted, which was Offaly against Tipperary.
Yeah, I think Shane was after jumping out there, but as he was saying there, Offaly against Tipperary in a preliminary quarter-final in 3 weeks' time. I don't think too many people would have predicted that as being a preliminary All-Ireland quarter-final pairing before the weekend. At different stages yesterday, it didn't look like Tipperary were even going to be in the championship. We looked like maybe we were going to kick on in extra time with a Joe Mack final on Saturday evening, but it's teed up absolutely perfect for the OurGame diehards in 3 weeks' time in Tullamore.
Yeah, so look, we've done up a bit of a path to the All-Ireland final here just to show people the dates, how much of a break different teams will get heading into the All-Ireland series. So we know that we're going to see on Sunday, June the 11th, the Leinster final and then the Munster final. They're both on. The following weekend, Offaly are against Tipperary in Tullamore. Carlow will meet Dublin. Then the following week on from that, you're going to have the All-Ireland quarterfinals, then a couple of week break into the semi-finals, and then another couple of weeks again heading into the All-Ireland final. So it's going to be great stuff all the way. I said to you a couple of weeks ago, I couldn't find the clip, but I said to you, and we were joking about if Offaly met Tipperary in a preliminary All-Ireland quarterfinal, if you were offered a 15-point defeat, would you take it? The offer stands.
Was it 15 or 10?
15.
15, okay.
Point of man.
I wouldn't my rear take it. I tell you were hanging on for your lives yesterday. It's funny. One of the comments there just came in and said that I said we'd take a pop off whoever we're playing at in the preliminary quarterfinal. I didn't realise obviously we were going to be playing Tipperary, which makes it better again because like when did the last play in championship? It's a good few. I think it was a qualifier in Portlaoise, I think.
2010?
No, a couple of years after, maybe 15 or 16, I think. But yeah, that's going to be interesting to say the least when the time comes around there. But the Joe Mack was a bit of a heartbreaker for us on Saturday evening. What an advertisement for the game as well, and an advertisement for the second tier competition. But it was a bit of a heartbreaker. Carlow probably did deserve it on the balance of play, to be fair to them. They were probably the better team throughout, but we got ourselves into a position going into extra time where I thought we'd kick on and we just weren't able to.
So let's go through it then. Carlow 229, Offaly 131 after extra time. Just go through it, because first of all, your Twitter was absolutely on fire and there was no shortage of exclamation marks being used when glory Cahill this, faithful pride that.
Never said the word pride, actually. I'm very careful with that, because I know all the journalists go mad anytime anyone from Offaly says anything to do with pride. Hugh Paddy's on. He's a happy man. He's a happy man this morning. Hugh Paddy O'Byrne, that used to play with Carlow. Offaly actually started unbelievably well. Charlie Mitchell had a goal maybe inside 60 seconds, but
nice for him to bounce back actually from what happened in the Leinster under-20 final when he got red carded.
Yeah, he had a good game. He worked like a dog, like he always does. But Carlow really got into it thereafter. They killed us on high ball. Now, I mean to say, their aerial ability was so good, and as a good few people have said to me since, like Tom Mullaney's obviously from Glenmore. They played like a Kilkenny team. Like they were able to out-battle us and out-think us and out-fight us in the air. A lot of their scores came from direct ball, be it inside or even in the half-forward line. John Michael Nolan made some great catches. Paddy Boland was probably the difference maker, I'd say, in normal time. He ended up at 1-4. He got a great goal, and then he won the penalty. Now, questionable whether it was square ball, and Darren Matter unfortunately ended up getting a red card as a result of it as well. What was viewed by Thomas Gleeson as a pull of the face guard, which I thought was really, really harsh.
It was harsh.
To say.
I mean, when you can contrast it with, like, I didn't think this was a red, but the Cahill Barrett versus Seamus Flanagan the week before. I mean, is there much difference? Is there really intent? I thought that was very harsh.
Yeah, no, I thought it was very harsh. And you're thinking, Offaly are down to 14 here. About 23, 24 minutes into the first half. It's all Carlow. They were 7 up going into the break. We got it back to 2. But you're thinking, you're going to struggle here. Offaly would probably, not that Jason Sampson would have been playing as a sweeper, but he would have been sitting that bit deeper. So we lost a lot of cover as a result of that, and we pushed a good bit higher up the pitch. But we kept chipping away, despite, I think we'd won 7 on the board at half time, and we'd 11 wides. We ended up with 26 all told after extra time, which is an absolute killer. But a lot of them were bad wides in the sense of they were not, good shot options, to be honest with you. And that's just the cut and thrust of it. How many different free takers did we end up with? Owen Cattle started on them, Killing Kiley took them. David Nally, who unfortunately had to go off at the end of normal time with probably, I think, a broken hand or a couple of broken fingers, made a block very similar to Colin Fenley's one on Lar Corbett in the 2011 final, where he put hand, body, head and all on the line. But Offaly got a great bounce from the bench. Evan Kelly came in, Paddy Clancy came in, and Owen Cattle forced a draw at the end of normal time, and Carlow were out on their feet. Now, to me, they looked out on their feet. And I don't know how they resurrected in extra time, but generally with the same personnel, they resurrected in extra time. They were so cute in extra time as well, winning a couple of frees, killing the clock a small bit. Like, it's not sour grapes in any way. It was unbelievably smart, just real guile, real cuteness to them. And Chris Nolan ended up putting over the winner in extra time, but it was just over back. Probably wasn't the greatest defensive display from either teams, but it was just a brilliant advertisement for, as I said, for hurling in general and for the competition that the Joe McDonagh Cup is, and just how competitive it is. There was nothing between them at the end. Heartbreak for our lads, but as I said at the start, on the balance of play, Carlow were the better team, and their scores came a lot easier. They were so efficient in front of the post. And Dermot Byrne got we're all talking about Dermot Burns, but Dermot Byrne got a point from he was about 100 yards out at one stage. And he was just outstanding in the Carlow defence as well. And they deserved a victory, a narrow victory, but they just about deserved it.
Yeah, let's get some Carlow comments in. Hugh Paddy said, morning men. Give us more than that. Who did you think the stars were on the day? Like, Chris Nolan is a serious player, and we've kind of seen that before as well. Shane Brophy says, of the Nina Guardian, does the Joe Mac need a revamp? Not right that Kerry, Leash and Downer finished in mid-May. Not right that the final is on in May. Does the link to All-Ireland need to go to let it expand? Well, I kind of think so, being honest with you. But look, I get it. At the same time, people think it's great to have that carrot of the All-Ireland preliminary quarter-final. Like, there's slightly less jeopardy knowing that Offaly had the backup or maybe the punishment of having to play another game against Tipperary. Did it take a little bit of the edge out of it?
No, to be honest with you, because when you lose the final, you lose the final. Like, and history would suggest that the teams that have been beaten in the Joe Mac final haven't bounced back particularly well at all when they played that preliminary quarter final. So no, there's no kind of saving grace or silver lining to it. The only thing either of those two teams wanted on Saturday night was to get their way back into the Leinster Championship, and they didn't do so. I also have to, a couple of people said it to me yesterday that Offaly got what they deserved, by choosing to play Carlow in the final.
Well, you did throw the previous game. You did throw the last game.
The greatest load of rubbish that we chose to play one team over the other. That was the way the fixtures worked out. There's a certain cohort of people saying like the Offaly were afraid to play Laois, which is absolute rubbish, and I won't buy that at all. And Johnny Kelly justified his selection in his interview after, and there were 3 or 4 players that were really struggling even to make it to the pitch on Saturday night after being rested for that game against Carlow. To me, they earned their right, but this idea of that they chose to play one team or the other is absolute nonsense.
No, I don't think you chose it, but you did effectively throw the game. Like, you're putting out 15 lads, and you'd love to win it, but realistically, you made 12 changes, then you reverted 12. I mean, let's go.
Oh yeah, 100%. We played our best team for the final, but like any idea of you got what was coming to you or anything like that, I think is absolute madness. Carlow were the better team on the day and deserved their win. And Tom Mullally, who's had unbelievable success at club level, and I'm probably going to leave out some here: Glenmore, Mount Leinster Rangers, Clara, Naas. There's probably a couple more in there, I'd say, somewhere along the way. I think he was with the Wexford under-21s. He was with the Carlow Miners at one stage as well. This is a huge success for him at county level, because I think everybody, around the club scene knows how good of a manager and a coach he is. But this is a huge success, and how he resurrected them in extra time, I don't know, because I thought they looked in big trouble. Maybe there was a part of Offaly expended so much energy with 14 to get back level, and then when Offaly had 15, you think they're going to kick on, but it didn't work like that. And I said Carlow's kind of cuteness and how wily they were in extra time was like, if you're a Carlow man and you're looking at that, you're just thinking, this is brilliant. We're playing the clock beautifully. We're playing the game beautifully here. And as I said, yeah, they deserved their win. It was a narrow win, but they deserved it.
Yeah, and most Joe McDonagh finals are brilliant, or else they're close. Like last year, it was 5-22 to 4-24, Antrim beating Kerry, 37 points to 36. The year before that, Westmeath, they were very good actually against Kerry, but they put up a winning score of 228. Now, it was tight the year before in 2020, 22 points to 117. But even before that, Laois put up a winning score of 326 and Carlow 226 the year before that. Generally, these games have been, completely high octane. A Sully180, your buddy from Burr, says Darren Maher was very unlucky, but unfortunately, when you touch the helmet, you're under risk. Barrett got away with it last week. Just depends on the ref's view. So
yeah, Thomas Gleeson generally let a lot of things go. He let a couple of things go now that were blatant frees, but he definitely played into making it a very, very good game. But I thought with the way the game was refereed that was a very, very harsh decision.
Yeah, okay. Anything else you want to say on that? I mean, you're obviously looking forward to the match against Tipperary. Tipperary at sea, of course. So you'll smell blood.
Well, I tell you what, I'm glad it's not like the week turnaround that they would have had before, because I don't think you'd be taking the week turnaround either with the injury list that you have at the moment. But I'm glad that the boys get to go out and drown their sorrows for a couple of days, and I'm sure they'll regroup at the end of the week. And it's gas. Like Brendan Matter's going to be coming up against Tipp now as well.
And Martin
Matter's going to be coming up against Tipp. Martin. It's a crazy kind of scenario. Johnny Kelly's obviously would know the Tipp scene inside out from being Barcelona manager too.
And Nina, he was involved with Nina then last year as well.
So it's going to be kind of a bonkers kind of setup going into that game. But that'll probably be the best reflection of where Carlow are when they play Dublin. And it'll be the best reflection of where we actually are. And maybe call me crazy, but like maybe Offaly need another year or two at Joe McDonagh Cup level before they go play Leinster Championship. Would they survive in Leinster next year? I'm not so sure. Will Carlow survive? I don't know that either. But Offaly will be back in the Leinster Championship when they're ready to be back in the Leinster Championship. And they were, in fairness to Carlow, that was a brilliant performance for them the other night, and they deserved it.
I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you know what the attendance was Offaly Carlow the other night?
I actually don't know that, no, because I was watching it from home here, because we're expecting a bab in the next couple of days, so I was watching it at home here. Couldn't get into it, unfortunately. I don't know. And one thing about the cameras where RT had them placed the other night, so the camera was facing over towards the Horgan, which is unusual.
Yeah.
So I think that was to probably highlight the crowd that was there, and it seemed to be a decent crowd there. But the one thing it missed is you actually didn't get to see the subs coming on as clearly as you normally would, because the camera wasn't focused in on top of it. So I actually missed some subs late in the game.
And actually, I was chatting to Jerry Canning, the commentator, yesterday at RT in Croke Park, and he was telling me that the sun was shining straight on top of him for that game, and he couldn't even see the TV screens in front of him. It was that bright.
Yeah.
But the point I was going to come to asking you about the crowd is that there will be more at the All Ireland Under-20 final. There just seems to be a bigger crowd turning out for Offaly games for underage than senior, even though the seniors are going well. It's nuts.
Yeah, there's just a buzz around that underage team, and I think, given the way the economics of the country are at the moment, I'd say a lot of families had to make a decision about whether they were going to Croke Park last Saturday or whether they were going to Thurles next Sunday. Given the financial outlay a lot of families would have to make, particularly if they're bringing 2 or 3 kids or whatever. So like, I think there'd be 40,000 plus in Thurles on Sunday, easy. If there was 20 something in Nolan Park last year for Offaly, Tipp, throw in Cork there, obviously a bigger hurling county than Tipp, and it'll be even more.
Sorry, bigger population.
Yeah. And obviously throw Galway and Clare into the mix as well. I think to be 40,000+ there, and the lads had the sprinklers and everything on in Tom Semple's field yesterday, getting it ready for the next day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I'm delighted to say now we're joined by Nikki Brennan, former GA president, former Kilkenny player, manager, an all-around good guy, I suppose. Nikki, how are you?
Very good, Shane, for that introduction. Sure, it's a good morning. Hi, Michael.
What?
Hello, Michael.
Nikki, how are you?
All right.
What did you make of the hurling weekend, Nikki?
Sure, it was fantastic, to be fair. I mean, Leinster, the poor province over here in the east that nobody thinks is any good at all, covered up a lovely final day, 3 games in their own way. I suppose for many, I feel very sorry that people who were hoping to see Kilkenny and Wexford and weren't at the game couldn't see it anywhere. And when we saw it last night on the Sunday game, we had one old dodgy era. So I feel sorry for those that missed the cracking game. I can't understand how it wasn't at least put on GA Go, but such as is. But looks were brilliant in the end. Parity got their noses ahead at the right time. Dublin, Galway, a very competitive game. I saw that. I was watching the other one. And fairness to Antrim and Westmeath was also very competitive. And sure, to be fair to Munster, it hasn't disappointed all year. 2 fantastic matches and a great way to wrap up the finale of the round robin series. It must be said, it has been pretty decent, really. And I suppose in many ways it shows that. And it's not now is the time not to do it, but clearly it's going to throw a bit of spotlight on the league for the shadow boxing that it is, really, to be honest about it. But for another day. But yeah, it's been very good so far. And look, the main course is probably still to come.
Nikki, just on Kilkenny and Wexford, like, I couldn't believe that there was nowhere to watch this game. Terrestrial television, I couldn't believe that it wasn't the chosen game for RTE, given that, what was at stake for Wexford. And obviously it's Wexford, Kilkenny. The games have been absolutely superb the last couple of years. Like, what are your own thoughts on that? To me, it's a mystifying decision by the national broadcaster not to air that game. And for them to at least not be on GA Go is very, very disappointing.
Yeah, Michael, I'm with you 100%. It was a terrible decision. I don't know who made the decision, but not having it on GA Go at least, I think somebody got to answer for that. I mean, Kilkenny and Wexford rarely disappoint, and there was a lot at stake here. I mean, potentially Wexford were going down to the Joe Donagh, and many people in Wexford, both before and after the game, said to me yesterday, this was the biggest game Wexford ever played, even bigger than the final day. Probably people will know from 96, maybe not as many from 68. That's how they viewed the game yesterday, and they really ratcheted it up. They had Sing at the Crossroads, they had Boule of Vogue, they brought out Anthony Kearns, the member of the Irish Tenors, to sing. boule of vogue as Wexford came out in the field. It was fantastic. No credit to Wexford. They drummed it up because the supporters had literally fallen out of love with their Wexford hurlers. But the big love-in started when the final whistle went yesterday. It was a great occasion and was something that should have been aired at least on GAO. It was a big missed opportunity. Somebody has got to manage that.
Nikki, can you talk us through the game? Because the pressure that Wexford were under going into this game, knowing that if Antrim beat Westmeath, that they were gone. Like, what sort of pattern did the game follow? Did we see any nerves from Wexford, or did they just horse into it?
Oh no, there was big nerves from Wexford, but Kilkenny started off without three starting players. Richie Reid was missing, Paddy Deegan was missing, and they were both injury concerns. And Billy Ryan, they decided not to start. Brought in Pádraig Walsh, Walter Walsh, and Billy Drennan. And but from an early stage, Wexford were very, very nervous. Kilkenny bagged 2 early goals through Owen Cody and Mossy Keoghan. And Mossy, scoring his goal, pulled his hamstring, so he was off. Then they lost Darren Mullen with what appears to be a fractured thumb, the top part of his thumb, and then lost Adrian Mullen, Mikey Butler, yeah. And Mikey, in fact, was limping a bit on one side of the field, and as he was limping, his marker ran over to the other side of the field, obviously waiting, and Mikey obviously ran over after him, but ran over on whatever damaged leg he had, and probably compounded the problem. So he was on crutches leaving the dressing room yesterday. So very likely that Butler and Mull and Keoghan are likely to be missing the Leinster final. So aside from losing the game, it was very costly. But to be fair, that discommoded Kilkenny. They did lose their shape with the loss of those 3 guys, and Wexford came back very well. Now, it probably helped Wexford that they went man on man early on, but realising that Kilkenny were walking through them, they let D. O'Keefe become a bit more defensive, and that certainly steadied them. And they had a fantastic finish to the first half, and in fact led by a point at half time. You couldn't have seen that midway through the first half. And sure, look, it was just drama galore in the second half. Wexford went 7 up, Kilkenny looked dead in the water, and then Kilkenny went in with Owen Cody and Tom Phelan bagging goals. So it was just it was rip-roaring stuff that had the crowd on their feet. And I mean, the Wexford people were just, they were cheering like never before. I mean, this was just such a big deal to them. And to be fair to Kilkenny, while they already had got the Leinster final ticket, they absolutely gave it everything. And look, it was very tight at the end. TJ was blown for a hand pass. Now, that you couldn't see it too well last night. They showed it very briefly. It went across to Alan Murphy, who flicked it into the back of the net. Now, look, margins are small in these games, and maybe 1 or 2 other calls might went their way. But for the passion that Wexford brought on and off the field today, you couldn't begrudge them the victory, to be honest about it. But it was a great occasion.
Nikki, you might just move to your right hand side a small bit there, but while we're chatting as well, there must have been some outpouring of emotion after the game from the Wexford people. I saw a clip going around of Conor McDonald catching a puck out, putting the ball down into the beach, I'd say, drubbing about 200 yards over the stand. But there must have been, like, you've been involved with clubs and different things where there's maybe been relegation at stake. Like, there's no pressure like that pressure, and I'd imagine there was some outpouring of emotion after.
Of course there was. Who would want to be part of a panel of players who history would show were relegated down to Joe McDonagh? Now, Joe McDonagh was a great friend of mine and one of the great hurling men that ever was, and it's right that a competition is named after him. But right now, Lee McCarthy is tier 1 and Joe McDonagh is tier 2. And these Wexford players did not want to have their names etched on a piece of paper or somewhere to say these were the guys down. And the worry they had, as Tom Dempsey said to me afterwards, the worry was that if you go down there, you know, there's no guarantee that you're going to get up. It could take 2 years to get back up, and that makes the current crop of players 2 years older. And are they going to be the same players when they come back to senior, albeit a route through the Lee McCarthy Cup via the Joe McDonagh, the 2 finalists, as we know ourselves. But nevertheless, it was simply just relief all around, and just Wexford did not want this to happen. They got unbelievable flack in their country through local media in the past 2 weeks. I mean, even they got criticised for the poor crowd turning up for the under-20 match against Offaly in Netwatch Cullen Park, 4-1 out by Offaly. And this was something that this gets in on the players. You can say you block out the noise and all the rest, but nah, the real world is, you know what's going on. and management, county board officials, they got terrible flack. And there was an immense sigh of relief when the final whistle went. I can assure you, in Wexford Park, it was a great place to be yesterday evening, to be honest about it. Look, disappointing from a Kilkenny point of view to have gone on winning. And we don't have a great record against Wexford in recent times. They've beaten us last year in the Leinster Championship. They beat us this year in the Leinster Championship. We considered a hell of a big score yesterday. So Kilkenny have a lot of reflecting to do going forward in this championship.
Yeah, Nikki is interested there. A couple of minutes ago, I was talking, myself and Michael were talking about how Offaly in their final group game, they made 12 changes and obviously saving players for the final. For Kilkenny, they didn't need to win here. And obviously the integrity of the competition, you want them to go full board against Wexford, especially for Westmeath's sake. But by Kilkenny putting out a strong team and all the injuries that you've named, are they now harming their chances for 2 weeks' time in the Leinster final?
Well, look, at these things in a match. I mean, they stood down Richie Reid, who was not fully recovered from concussion. Paddy Deegan had been carrying a big injury, and while he played the last day, they needed him a little bit more time. And there wasn't they were in the Leinster final. So to be fair, Billy Ryan's change was tactical. So Kilkenny put out their strongest possible team. What they had not bargained for was losing 3 players in the first 25 minutes. So I mean, it's not in Kilkenny's DNA to put out a weakened team from that perspective. And anyway, I think Derek would always have said any one of his first 26 has got to be seen as a team player. Number 25 or 26 could be a starter in any game. And from the extended panel, Richie Horgan and Mikey were brought on to the squad yesterday. They didn't get game time. So look, they're 2 lads that have played at the highest level as well. So Kenny don't do weakened teams, and I think we showed good respect to the competition and to Wexford. And look, it was a ball always between the teams at the end, really. But it could have gone either way, and maybe Wexford just needed that win that little bit more. And in the way they won the last couple of possessions, it was clearly a team that was hell bent on not being part of history for the wrong reasons.
Can I just ask you, Nikki? I have to say, I thought it was really peculiar that the Kilkenny-Wexford game was put back 10 minutes. I don't care if there was 40,000 people going into Wexford Park. I think all of those games should have thrown in at the exact same time and finished within 60 seconds of each other. Were there hordes of people going into Wexford Park? And do you think the other games should have been delayed by 10 minutes as well as a result? Because Wexford knew their fate with 10 minutes to go. They knew what they had to do, if you get me. And I personally don't think that was the right thing.
I think that's a very fair point. Indeed, that was a lot of the chat up in the area before the match. Would it be delayed? I'm puzzled as to why it was delayed. I mean, there was just over 9,000 there. I mean, Kilkenny played Wexford in the French Cup earlier in the year with the turning on of the lights. There was 15,000 there. So I'm a bit puzzled as to why there was a delay. And we were wondering, will all the other matches be delayed? Well, particularly the one in Mullingar. There was possibly less reason for the one in Croke Park, given that possibly TV scheduling there. But the one in Mullingar should have been held up for 10 minutes in line with the one in Wexford Park. And I think it's probably something for the GA to look at going forward, because you're quite right. Wexford knew their fate 10 minutes into the end of that match. And I'd be surprised if Darren Egan didn't get a message to the lads. And maybe that's why, just what I'm after saying, in the latter stages, Wexford players really, really went for it big time towards the end of the match when it looked like the game was slipping away. Perhaps they knew at that stage what the situation was. But it's something the GA will have to look at, because there's a reason why all the games are put on at the same time. But now if there's an issue arises like what happened, I don't know. I was surprised there was a delay in throwing. Obviously, I was inside the ground, so I can't honestly say what it was like outside the ground. But at a crowd of just over 9,000, that shouldn't be an issue in a big ground like Wexford or Nolan Park or anywhere else for that matter to accommodate a crowd coming in.
Yeah, John S. says, Michael, the traffic around Oilgate yesterday was brutal and there were delays around on the way in.
Now, to be fair, the traffic around Oilgate is always brutal. That's a fact, even on a quiet day. But I just wonder, was there a bit of a stroke going on, someone in power in Wexford Park, like the day you let the grass grow in Croke Park,
Get out of it. Yeah. For those are watching, that was 2006. But some other day I'll happily come on and give you the whole logo on that one. Where I was an innocent party. But look, the guy who came in on the text there, look, he was obviously outside the ground. I was not outside the ground, to be fair. I was in early, and it might very well be that there was a crowd close to the 2:00 throw-in. I mean, I was in there relatively early. There's a Joe Butler with a text on there now, and I was in the ground probably around 12:30, and there was little or no activity around it at that stage. The texter is spot on, but could be in a crowd outside at 2:00. So I'm not prepared to say that there wasn't a reason for it. I'm just surprised with a crowd of 9,000. But that's whether the bottom line is that the Mullingar game and the Wexford game should have absolutely started at the same time. I'm less worried about the one in Croke Park, because the result there was not going to have a big bearing on the bottom end of the table.
Nikki, what was the reaction of Darren Egan? Like, he was under huge pressure coming into this game. The commentary, even from around the country, has been, well, that's the end of Darren Egan now. So whether it is or it isn't, like, the pressure was stacked up on him.
Yeah, it's absolutely brutal. And I mean, he was well aware of the flack they took. He was obviously in chatting to us after the game. He would have been uncomfortable with that, would have been annoyed with that. But at the same time, he recognised that what happened the previous week against Westmeath was was not acceptable at all. And I suppose you can understand, the reaction of supporters to a degree. But he knew that the players had not delivered, and they had one final opportunity. And it was with immense relief after the game. And, he was very bullish after the game. And I put it to him that he sounded like a man that finished business down in Wexford Park. And he more or less said, well, obviously that's going to be up to somebody else. But certainly it's like a guy that felt that there was plenty of people down there would probably send him back up the road to Tipperary and not want to see the back of him again. But at the same time, he came across to me as a guy who he's a good guy, Darren Egan. Now, let's be honest about it. He's a very honoured, decent guy, and worked very hard. And things just went a little bit off the rails for him a bit this year, but he managed to get it back on track in time. And I think he would want to stay down there. Not sure there's an obvious replacement roster moving up in the 20s if Keith is ready for that yet. So they may have to, and as well as that, on the Sunday game, I mean, Lee Chin was strong in his support for Darren Egan and what he had done. So he appears to have a good bond with the players. He's a good guy. He works very hard, and I think he's with beef. And look, they need to rethinking. I mean, for a county that is such a strong hurling county, as I spoke to Tom Dempsey yesterday, and All-Ireland in '68 and then All-Ireland in the mid-90s, that's a poor enough return for a strong hurling county. And maybe that's where Wexford need to start reflecting a little more why it's like that, and maybe always be focused on the most recent competition, the most recent game. But the picture is probably a bit bigger that needs to be reviewed in Wexford.
Yeah, Shane, just on Darren Egan quickly, his ability to conjure Lazarus-like recoveries is unbelievable in the last couple of years. Remember, Dublin hammered in the Walsh Cup. They beat Limerick a week later in the first round of the league down in Wexford Park. Like, they looked in big trouble when Westmeath drew it to them last year. They go out and beat Kilkenny a week later in Nolan Park. I think their first and only championship win in Nolan Park. Like, they were at an all-time low last Sunday evening when Westmeath beat them. And whatever, they were able to circle the wagons. I was chatting Rory Jacob the other day, and he said there was a 225-year commemoration up on top of Owlert Hill, going back to the 1798 rebellion. He said they were circling the wagons, and they obviously circled them fairly well, because they pulled out a performance for the ages yesterday when the pressure was at its greatest. And, there's not, obviously Nikki was there and he'd tell us a bit more, but I understand Lee Chin was just heroic, and Liam McGovern coming back from 2 cruciates, Dee O'Keefe as well. Like, all the elder statesmen, Nikki, by all accounts, seemed to really stand up when they were needed most.
Yeah, Chin was absolutely amazing yesterday. He won an awful lot of ball, a lot of hard ball. He got out in front of his men. He roamed out the field and won ball. If you look near the very end, he was out 40, 50 metres winning ball. I think the fact that Dee O'Keefe and Kevin Foley were back on the team yesterday was a big factor as well. I'm not sure they worked there the previous week. I think they brought on Dee O'Keefe all right. That was a big factor. Now, they lost Shane Reck before throwing with an injury as well. Probably would have been earmarked for Owen Cody. So look, they got a lot out of their big players, and on a day when their life was on the line here, they needed big players to stand up, and they did that. But look, Kenny gave a mighty performance as well in many respects. Not all of the players maybe they only lost the game by 2 points, and it was just a fantastic contest. And I just felt that Wexford having that bit more to play for, just that marginally little bit more to play for, was probably the factor in the end.
Joe Butler says there, maybe Wexford get too hyped up when they play Kilkenny. Is it their All-Ireland? So, like, even just to take that, Nikki, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I said to Darren Egan after the game yesterday, Darren, if all your matches were played with the opposition wearing the black and amber, wouldn't that be great for Wexford? And he didn't disagree. That answers your question, Shane.
But Nikki, where do you think Kilkenny are at now? Because you've already outlined the injury situation. There's a couple of players that have emigrated from last year. A few more are coming through. Billy Drennan, Gro Dunn, and Timmy Clifford, for example. They're the obvious ones. Where do you feel Kilkenny are at in the pecking order?
Well, I think now going into a Leinster final against Galway. Now, Galway will be a little bit bruised after yesterday as well. And they were well out of the game for long periods and will be happy to have come back. But, it was probably, while Dublin had to get the equaliser, I think Galway will be disappointed. And Henry would have alluded to that as well in his post-match and in the media this morning. But it's very hard to know. Kilkenny go in now likely without those three players for the Leinster final. I think Richie Reid and Paddy Deegan will probably be back, which will balance it a little bit. But they're going to have to look at how they want to reshape the team. Probably Conor Delaney will come in at back and the Mikey Butler. Richie Reid slots in to centre half back. They'll probably need a new midfield partner now for Paddy Deegan, whoever that's going to be. So it's going to be a change here if lads we won't know their injuries, the extent of their injuries until for a day or two. So that's where it is. Where are they in the pecking order? Look, Kilkenny, now it's going to be straight up. Well, not quite knockout from here in, but it's going to be, you're playing final, you want to win it. And Ling will not want to go into a Leinster final and not win the game. It's his first Leinster final as manager. And he'll want to win that. I'd dismiss Kilkenny any day of the week. They're capable of beating any team on any given day. But definitely their strength has been reached. Possible loss of a couple of players, I would say. And that could be a factor in the next while. How long those guys might be out, hopefully not at all, but they're all out for a number of weeks. It could be a problem because this championship is extremely condensed, and any county that suffers a spate of injuries, their future in the competition could be very much impacted by the extent of injuries and the absence of players, and that might possibly be Kilkenny at the moment that could be going into the next lot of games without some key players.
It's the gas, Nicky. The man beside me here reckoned like everyone was killing each other in Munster, and sure the boys in Leinster were going to be fresh coming into the All-Ireland stages. Kilkenny don't look too fresh at the moment. It's funny, we do actually go hard at it in Leinster, despite what some people would suggest.
Imagine if you had to play like me and Cork and Limerick as well, rather than teams that, let's be honest, aren't going to be challenging for All-Irelands. Yeah,
but that's not the question I asked.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, how much would the toll be then?
Well, Limerick didn't look too unfresh today. They were playing Cork, having played Tipperary the previous week. I'm not sure Tipperary were unfresh either. I think they were not mentally maybe right for it. So I think they were tuned out a little bit, to be honest about it. And Tipperary will be the most disappointed of all the weekend. But you're right. Look, I mean, yesterday was pretty competitive down in Munster, and who knows? This could level up a fair bit. I mean, I would not dismiss Kilkenny, Dublin, or they should not be dismissed going forward in the championship. Any of these teams can make an impression on anything that Munster has to offer. Let's be honest about it. Yes, the Munster championship has been at a bit higher tempo, and everything to do with the game is at a higher level at the moment. But look, it's amazing how it can level out, and that's just, it could very well happen over the next number of weeks as the concluding stages emerge as well. So I think, look, let the two people find, let them be played out now, and we could be in for a cracking finale to the championship yet. Who knows? Nikki, and I wouldn't dismiss Leinster teams at all.
Just a quick question, Nikki, on Adrian Mullen. Were he to be missing for the Leinster final or more? He's probably nearly Kilkenny's most important player at the moment, maybe outside of TJ, or maybe sharing that mantle with him. If you were to be without him for a period of time, which it looks like he will be, that would be a colossal loss.
I agree with you. Yeah, well, look, Mikey Butler was an all-star last year. Adrian Mullen, an all-star last year. And they're two guys. Martin Keown is a real goal-scoring threat for Kilkenny. He's a big, strong guy that's really after shaping up. And any players, Mullen in particular, he's a leader of the team out around the middle of the field now. He's able to help back the backs. He's able to set up play for individuals, and he's not just a scorer himself, but he's a real team player and a grafter, and has got physically very strong as well. So is able to hold the midfield area very well against physically strong opposition.
How good was TJ, Nicky?
Look, TJ Breed will start every match for Kilkenny. It's not being disrespectful to him to say he does not have the pace that he once had anymore. That's just unfortunately the way it happens when you get that bit older, as we all know. But he's still an important player, because while he mightn't be power all scores himself, he still is very astute in terms of his possession and in terms of what a player moving in at the far side of the field or in close proximity to lay the ball off. So that's why he's important. He will demand a lot of attention from opposing defenders. And in watching DJ, it might just leave an opening for another Kilkenny player, and that's why he's so important to Kilkenny still.
Nicky, did you see any other game in its entirety over the weekend, or was it just? I know you were down at Wexford, Kilkenny, so it probably makes it difficult to see another game.
Well, I saw the game that was on the Sunday game last night. I was watching the Dublin and Galway match as I was watching the match in Wexford Park, and clearly Dublin put in they moved away in whirlwind fashion from Galway. Galway were really struggling with their game. And I suppose it's something that Henry is going to have to consider, how he's having these fade-out series. Yes, they came again at the end and possibly could have matched. But I think Mike O'Donoghue is actually doing a good job here with Dublin. I think he said to us after the last day that there was a lot of younger players. He was trying to get to play a particular style. And he was justified in the decision to move from Parnell Park to Croke Park on the basis that the type of player he has now is more comfortable in the wider expanses of Croke Park. Now, if he's to get back some of the guys who went travelling this year and get them back into the panel, and I don't know if that's going to happen, but he's working on a group of players at the moment and making something of them. And while they faded at times in Nolan Park against Kilkenny, I still thought that they didn't play too badly, and they're a team that if he stays with them himself and Franny Ford, and they'll do a good job in Dublin, and they will be making Dublin a stronger force. So, but Galway, against Kilkenny, anything could happen in the Leinster final, and who knows who will win that one. As regards I expected Limerick to beat Cork, and I always thought it was going to be tight, because I think Don Kiley, he laid a marker at the start by naming 22 of the last day are still his key men. Garrod Hegarty and Seamus Flanagan, just to mention two. They were key. He really put it up to those guys yesterday to prove to him that they should be starting on the team and all of that. And they made a big difference. But Burns at wing back is becoming such a huge player for them. He's possibly still in the running for Hurl of the Year again this year, to be honest with the way that guy is playing. His radar is just the best in the business. And but I think Cork will be disappointed. There was always going to be, with Waterford out of it yesterday, there was always going to be one big name apart from Waterford going to lose out. So that's just the way it is. And as regards the Tipp game, I just felt I knew there'd be a bit of a kick in Waterford. And Davy talked about all this stuff. I heard his post-match interview, and that he certainly had a fair rant at an awful lot of people. But at the same time, he has to ask himself how it has got to this stage that they can only deliver this performance at the last game of the season, when players and managers are trying to just get something out of the year. But Liam Cahill will be terribly disappointed, and he has a bit of soul searching to do before he heads off to Tullamore to play in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay, well, Nicky, look, you've been brilliant with your time this morning, and hopefully we'll be chatting to you again soon.
Okay, guys, have a good day. Take care.
Cheers, Nicky.
Brilliant to have Nicky on there. Yeah, look, I was at the Galway-Dublin match yesterday, and I suppose just to go through the bullet points from the game, Dublin went 12 points up in the second half, and they were all over Galway. But then Galway made this incredible comeback from 219 to 13 points down on the 43rd minute. They were ahead just before the end of the game, the end of normal time. And it was Dublin who had to pull it out of the fire late on a couple of times. Donald Burke, he scored frees to sort of just keep them right there. But it was quite a performance from each team in either half. And I wondered afterwards, was this a bit of a Dublin fade out, a Galway fight back, or a little bit of both? I think it was a little bit of both, because Dublin could barely create a chance in the second half. Like in the first half, they scored 2-16, which would win you the odd game this year. For example, I don't think, I think that would have been enough to beat Waterford in any of their first 3 games, for example. And obviously Waterford changed that yesterday. But Dublin had created 31 chances in the second half, 4 goal chances, even though 2 of them were gifts. In the second half, Dublin created just 12 scoring chances, 6 of which were scored. In that time, Galway created 30 scoring chances and only put away 14. This is a game that Galway actually could have won because they steamrolled Dublin in the second half, which kind of makes it pretty impressive. Like, nobody likes going 12 behind, but you know, if you're in the dressing room afterwards, how you finish is nearly more important. You know, Henry Shefflin is going to be a lot more pleased and able to put a better sort of slant on that than Micheál Donoghue.
Yeah, do you think so? Because I think the fact that Dublin drew level, having looked like they'd blown a lead and all the momentum was at Galway, I still think they got something out of the game. If they'd lost by 1, I think it would have been a real killer for Dublin. I still think the fact they got something out of it kind of is like, lads, you could see what we were able to do for 45 minutes. And we were, you know, when the gun was put to our head at the end, we were like, that was a fair free from Donald Burke. Like, that was right out the sideline and it never wavered. It was straight and true. Just to go back, like, just Shane, the 2 goals were calamitous. You'd have to say, like, yeah, they were like Dana Murphy, the first one, like, that was, you know, you wouldn't see that in an under-12 match normally. Do you know what I mean? Then he goes to
casual, wasn't he?
Yeah, and then he goes to puck out the ball like within 2 seconds after, and you're just thinking you need to calm probably and take your time, reset, get a few deep breaths, and kind of go again. The second one was, you know, we were always told not to puck the ball across your own goal as a young fella. Like, you can probably do it a lot more in modern hurling now, but when there's somebody like Lurkin, you don't go near there. And in fairness to Danny Sutcliffe, he took that goal well. And I thought he really, like, that was his best performance, I would say, in a Dublin shirt for a long, long time.
Yeah, that was, you know, Danny really re-announced himself as a top player because, you know, his performance was excellent. He got the goal, he got a couple of points with it. Some other lads who really stood out for Dublin, Mark Rogan was excellent in midfield. Like, he was named captain for Crokes when he was 19 or 20. So he's always been a back as far as I've seen. Now, I'm sure he can play other positions, but, you know, it's his first season in there. He played excellently in the first half in particular. All of Dublin ran out of juice in the second half. Paddy Doyle, you know, he was one of the young players at the start of the year that I absolutely teed up, and he's franked that form. Conor Donoghue, his first season. Sean Curry, who was corner forward, actually he played wing forward. He was very good in the first half in particular. He only ever played, I think, a couple of minutes during the COVID year. So this is it's a much changed team for Dublin. And it was quite interesting that Micheál Donoghue would, of course, you know, all the Galway players there, he knows the colour of the knickers of most of those Galway players, realistically.
I hope not.
And Franny Ford would obviously know them very well also. But a couple of the matchups and different things that he did, I found quite interesting. He put Donald Burke in the full forward line, and, you know, Galway had awful trouble with him. Now, he ended up scoring 3 from play, and obviously he fired over his frees as he normally does, but he caused an awful lot of bother. The other thing is Paddy Smith completely shut down Conor Whelan. And Conor Whelan, who, you know, we rate massively highly, has been very quiet in the big games this year. He was taken off against Kilkenny. He was very quiet here and was held scoreless. And you'd have to give Paddy Smith a lot of credit. Remember last year he was very good on TJ Reid, or was it the year before? But look, he's had some big games. And you would have thought that Owen O'Donnell would have stayed in the full back line as well. But in the first half, he was actually more out in the half back line. And he came up and scored a couple of points. So that was an interesting use.
I'd say that might have given his club manager a few bit of food for thought for there in the air.
But like in the second half, then Galway changed things around a little bit. Like Declan McLaughlin, very young player, very slight player. He was hitting some 50-50 balls, and John Bellew did very well to sort of nudge him out of the way. So like it was a tough one for him. But you know, you had the likes of Jason Flynn and Brian Kincannon was brought in. So that meant that Owen O'Donnell had to go back closer to his own goal. But Kincannon, I presume he wasn't right if he wasn't starting. And he didn't really make that much of an impact at all, which was quite surprising. Conor Cooney, he's going to struggle to hold on to his position, I think, if his form doesn't jump up. Because a bit like Conor Whelan, he was also taken off at Nolan Park. And he was incredibly quiet here. He had a penalty attempt, which, you know, I'm president of the Sean Brennan fan club. Mm-hmm. But what a penalty save across himself. Now, it was obviously a good height for a keeper, but, you know, still in all, like, that's an incredible save from Sean. For whatever reason here, my chair is sinking. It's driving me mad.
Just a quick one, Shane. Joseph Cooney was a good bit further forward, was he? And he was brilliant from what I saw of it.
He was kind of midfield and then half forward, but just that whole zone on the left-hand side. 5 points from play. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that I just on Conor Whelan as well. Galway, like bigger picture in mind, getting silverware, potentially getting to a another semi-final, final. He's going to have to start firing, isn't he? Realistically.
Look, I look around and I'm just wondering who these experienced Galway players is getting it done at the moment. Obviously, Brian Kincannon was injured, so he couldn't really do it. Jason Flynn came on and he did all right. Obviously, he doesn't fully have Henry Shefflin's confidence at the moment if he's not been started, and some younger lads are. But I thought Evan Nyland, who has plenty of critics locally and probably around the country because he must be 24 now, and you're thinking he would have been really established by now. But as this game went on, he really stepped up, and not only did he take the frees, but he scored 3 from play as well. Tom Monaghan had 3 points, probably had maybe 4 wides as well. Ronan Glennon didn't do so bad. Pádraig Mannion, funnily enough, so he was half back, rather quiet game. He was actually moved full back on Donald Burke for a while. I don't think we've seen Pádraig Mannion full back since he DDT'd Seamus Callan back in, was that 2015?
2015, I think, yeah. Shane, there's some great, subtle kind of comments coming in, having jibes at you. Detox 101, Shane's sinking share, designed and built in Tipp, maybe. There's another comment in earlier where some fella said, I'm just joining the show now for the second half, like Tipp yesterday. People just, there's no jibe like a hurling jibe or a GA jibe.
Yeah, no, I saw that. I actually favorited that so I could bring it up at some stage. Yeah, he went to me nicely. I have to credit that Pádraig Stack. Well played.
Wasn't it mad yesterday? At different stages, Dublin were in the Leinster final for long stages yesterday. And at least, and they'll all know from that 2019 game against Laois, I'm sure that they won't be taking that for granted going in against the Carlow team that are going to be cock a hoop after winning the Joe McDonagh at the weekend. But I thought there was a lot of really heartening things from a Dublin point of view. Keane Sullivan's pace caused a lot of trouble at different times as well.
If the ball had just stick to him more, I think he's absolutely brilliant, and he got his 1-1. But if the ball stick to him a little bit more, when he turns and goes, there's very few that can stop him.
Yeah, it was a funny game at times in the first half as well, though. It was kind of, I don't know, it was a bit mad. There was a lot of Dublin lads in a hell of a lot of space at different stages, getting free shots away. I thought it was strange. Gerard O'Gracon had a comment in there saying that Galway's only game to win in Croke Park since the 2017 All-Ireland final is against Wexford in that COVID game, which they won well. And they've really struggled with the Dubs in really meaningful games, shall we say. 2019 end round-robin game, Leinster semi-final 2021, and this game the other day. And they were, at long stages of the game, you don't think they're going to get anything out of it. So, they probably saved face somewhat. But again, if you look at it in Leinster, the 2 Leinster finalists, there's big question marks over the 2 of them. Realistically, Kilkenny's personnel, we're not sure who they're going to have for the Leinster final. Galway's form is very indifferent, and the form of a couple of their best players is indifferent. Someone had a question in there just wondering about Cottle Mannion. I think he's injured. He had a hamstring injury earlier on in the league, and that seems to have kind of popped up again. He came off really early the last day, so that's a bit of a worry as well. But I think both managers and both sets of players came away with something yesterday. If Dublin had lost, I think it would have been a minor disaster because they played so well up until probably the 50th minute. Okay,
let's hear what David Fitzgerald had to say after Waterford's brilliant victory over Tipperary.
And it actually, I could say a word, annoys me so much that you get cut the way we got cut after 2 bad. We played well against Limerick, should have won it. First half against Cork, we were poor. Second half, we matched them and had 3 goal chances, didn't take them. Against Clare, we were matching them and had 12 wides therefore at half time. We had a poor second half that affected us. Out of the whole championship, right? We 2 halves that were poor and we got punished badly up from. But to listen to some of the crap that you listened to for the last few weeks is actually disgusting and annoying. So it is, to tell you the truth. I'm proud for the boys because the guys have trained so hard. They have worked so hard. And it's so annoying to see them being treated the way they've been treated. And I think they showed today what they're about. And fair play to them. Maybe last year they went in and there was nothing to play for. But every time we put on that Waterford jersey, I want them to play with that pride and that passion that they did there. And they're well able to do it. And I really want to thank the genuine people that backed us through the time. They mean the world. And they can see a glimpse of what we can do. And the only chance we have is to get people behind us, and there's enough of hardship in life without knocking. We need to stop that and get behind each other. And I think that's important. It's been a tough month, I can tell you. There's no one been harder than ourselves. But to my team and to my back room, I love them to bits, and they've given me everything.
Was there anything in particular, David, that annoyed you over the past couple of weeks?
No, I'm not going there tomorrow. You all know. I don't need to tell you that. You know. I'm not going talking about it anymore. Like, we're killing ourselves. We're not going out to play bad. So we're not. We're actually trying really hard. Is there a few little things we have to put right? There is one or two things outside of hurling that we need to put right, and we started that today, but it's a game of hurling. There's more things to life. Like, we're in the job 5 months, and I'd swear I was there 5 years. There's other managers that are there 3 and 4 years and have won 0, and they're not getting half the hassle. What the is that about? Like, we'll try our best. I'm delighted with the lads. I'm so happy for the team because we trained hard. We're so disappointed. If we beat Limerick right in the first round, what do you think would have happened today? Tipper out of the championship, we were probably through. So we are. Like, that's how it goes, you know, and it's that close. So it is.
What do you make of Billy Nolan's performance today, David?
Well, I was told before the game I must be mad playing him there. A few people make comments to certain people around our setup and said, what are you doing? Is David trying to pull a rabbit out of the hat? Why am I Bernie? Like, Billy plays centre back for Rome Moore. He plays in that role for WIT. Logically, it made sense to do that, and the move worked today. And look at the players who are missing today. But my God, if people tell me that team are bottlers or that Waterford are bottlers, Waterford are not bottlers, 110%. And I think we proved that today. So it didn't. Yeah, Tipp might have been a bit flatter today after last week. I don't know. But we were probably 10 to 12 points better than they were today.
Why didn't Conor Prunty, Jimmy Barron, or Austin Gleeson not start today, David?
Conor Prunty had an operation last Monday after the Clare game. He had a bad injury, so he had an operation last Monday. Jamie Barron tore a quad on Tuesday, and Austin tore one as well on Tuesday. So it's one of them years where we're getting no break injury-wise. You had the 3 of them. You had Tyg out with his Achilles. You had Shane McNulty still out with broken foot, and Mikey Kiley is still suffering since the Cork game. But you know what? We still had a bunch that fought on their backs for their county, and they love their county. All right, guys.
Michael Verney, huh? They sure do. Like, to be fair, they played very, very well. And, you know, I don't think Davies did anywhere wrong when you said that they were 10 or 12 points better than Tipperary in that game. But we can't not revisit the comment whereby there's some managers that are there 3 and 4 years and they aren't getting half the flack, I suppose, or whatever way you want to paraphrase it. And we looked at it. Who are the managers that are there 3 or 4 years? Year 4 are 2 managers, Darren Gleeson, and I doubt he's talking about Darren Gleeson, and Brian Lohan, manager of Clare. So, it feels a fairly pointed comment.
Yeah, it does look fairly pointed. There's no point in saying any different. If he's asking a question about why Brian Lohan's not getting any criticism, I'd say,
He got some of it last year after the defeat to Kilkenny.
Fair point, and he got plenty of praise after the Munster final, but there was a fair bit of criticism flying around after the All-Ireland semi-final. I don't know. Clare seem united under Brian Lohan. That's one thing I would say, and he seems to be universally loved by nearly all. There was another comment Davey made after the Clare game, which I thought was kind of interesting as well, to say the least. He just said, the respect I have for the players is massive, and I wish the players all the best. So there's obviously this, feud between Lohan and Davy is fairly well known from stemming back from that, that Fitzgibbon Cup game in 2014 between LIT and UL, in pitch 1 in UL, where LIT turned him over. But it's kind of bonkers that he doesn't name Brian Lohan. It was the same when he was a pundit with the Sunday game. He didn't name him. I think Davy probably needs to focus more on his own team and how they play, motivating his team and getting the best out of them, because what Waterford produced yesterday was just so far better than anything they produced so far this year. And that was without, he named, 4 or 5 of their best players there, not playing, all injured, and they produced, a brilliant performance. And what were the reasons for it? Why they played so well? Desi Hutchinson got a goal because he was hanging in around the square. and he was hanging in around the end line, hanging in inside that full forward line nearly the whole day. Patrick Fitzgerald, the same. He was in there. He was dangerous. Jack Fagan was, started wing back, midfieldish, but he was forward a lot of the time as well. They showed huge energy, a huge appetite for work. And you'd have to say it was a brilliant performance from a Waterford point of view, particularly given that, it was a dead rubber on paper anyway, but they were playing for a hell of a lot yesterday. I think they were playing for pride themselves, and I think partly maybe it could have been, Davy, playing for his job to some extent as well. And I'd say there's, it'd be fairly certain that he's probably going to stay on for 2024 now. But the negative, the negative commentary he's given out about, disgusting crap or disgraceful crap that was said, like when you score and you average 17.67 points over 3 games and you don't score a goal and you play as negatively as they did, you're fair game. At inter-county level, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. At inter-county level, you are fair game. And all these lads that have played for Waterford, your Ken McGraths and Owen Kellys, they're passionate about their county and want to see their county thriving. So to me, when results are going like that, you're fair game. When results go like they did yesterday, you get praise. That's just the way it is at inter-county level. It's the way it is at high-end club level as well. Even at lower-end club level, lads that get slated for managing a junior team for losing a game by 10 points and they'd be berated around the town. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, like everyone would look at that team selection that Waterford had yesterday and who they had available, because obviously the high-profile lads weren't there. And you're like, okay, that team makes sense. I get that. So, come hell or high water, win or lose, at least you kind of agree with the approach. Whereas when you do see a team look a little bit inside out as it did in previous games, and we kind of described how lads just felt like they were in odd positions, Desi out the field, Darragh Lyons corner back. We all knew that Tony Kelly would probably drag him to a position he didn't want to. Like, you have to take the criticism. And like shows like this give him plenty of praise when things go right too. He always has a massive platform to talk because there is such a media spotlight on him. So he always can shape the narrative any way he likes. So you have to take the rough with the poor. We'll come back to that game a little bit more, but we have Niall Moran coming in here now. Niall Moran, of course, former Limerick hurler and coach, and I suppose all around a great lad. How's Niall? You well?
It's a great lad, yeah. Retired lads there today now. There won't be a whole pile of work done around this neck of the woods. I don't see there be any work done in a lot of counties today. Kind of a national bank holiday for our national game, maybe.
It was something else, wasn't it, Niall? Like yesterday was just unbelievable.
I would safely say I think it was one of the greatest days of hurling of all time. Like we were trying to take on board what was going on above in Leinster. We were trying to watch the first half of the car of the Galway Dublin game. We were trying to get into the pub to watch the second half. And if you saw Limerick, like the scenes on the Ennis Road coming down there yesterday, it was just magical. We actually, just to see, like, there's something about Cork in Munster Championship. Like, you need Cork going well because the crowds of people that they bring, and obviously Limerick brought a huge crowd. There wasn't a drink to be got, warm cans of cider was all it was to be got, and you were looking to get one after the match. Like Hermitage Green were playing there at 2:30 in Limerick, and there was nobody watching them. Ordinarily, they'd sell out 30,000 people. Nobody wanted to watch them. We were more worried about what was going on in Music Park, Westmeath, and Antrim, and it was credible. We never had Sky Sports growing up because we didn't have, I don't know, maybe our parents didn't want us watching whatever could be on the foreign channels late at night, but Jesus, it was just felt like one of those Sky Sports final day of the Premiership job. Like, it was class, and yeah, it won't be all pile done, not a lot done yet.
And like, as the match was going on, like, what was the atmosphere like in the Gaelic grounds?
It was incredible, and I know I had referenced it there. Like last Sunday, inside the last 15 minutes of Tipp and Limerick, it was just, the place was lifting. It was like the Coliseum, and there again yesterday, like when the Rebels got going and the Rebel roar went up off the city and terrace or whatever else. Like, it was just it was incredible. It was just incredible. It's like, I can't articulate it. It's sometimes, you forget how much it's part of your soul and how much it's been a part of our lives, how much it's part of our everyday relationships. As in, like, you go to a game yesterday and it's your people. And I know it's cliched and I know there's ads to that effect, but it means everything. And to see the pride in people, and like people who have enough of problems going on in their lives and they're coming out 10 foot tall. You see generations of, you see sons bringing their parents who are in their 80s to the matches. You see parents bringing their children who are going to their very first game, and there's that intrinsic link, and there is nothing like it. There's honestly nothing like it. And if I have one criticism, I'm just I'm so sad that as of yesterday, you have there's 4 of the strong hurling counties straight away, of 6 of the strong hurling counties out of the championship, and I honestly question why we need to have this championship so close together. And I know, again, that's been cliched, but I'm coming from a different perspective, even as a club, a guy who's just probably coming off the club carousel as a player, maybe doing a little bit of coaching this year. It's a cod. Like this split season at club level, it's these couple of months are dead months. And I know they'll articulate the argument that it's great for the club player. It's not great for the club player because I see lads who are of college going age are going away to the States and things like that. But look, that's a conversation for another day. It was just a magical day, and I'm just kind of sad that we're probably only 4 or 5 more of them as it goes along. But yeah, incredible.
Michael?
Just a quick one on that. So Cork are gone out of the Munster Championship, Niall, having won a game, drawn 1 game and lost 2 games by a point. Like, that's the margins. Like, it's unbelievable, really, isn't it?
It's gone down the home straight last minute. One slip of a ball, one mistake. Like, you could look at micro moments in the game, like as in a refereeing decision, and straight away it costs you. Yes, it costs you your place in an All-Ireland quarter-final, but it costs the development of the game in a county. That's the bigger issue here, boys. Like, as in, I take it yesterday, okay? Let's just say, for argument's sake, Limerick did lose yesterday, and I'm taking it from our own perspective. Like, Munster won the rugby here on Saturday. Like, rugby is still here in Limerick. It's a huge sport. There is always going to be competition. You go to a place like Cork, they have competition from rugby, they have competition from soccer. As of now, those kids are not going to see their team play until next February. That's the bones of 8-9 months. Do you know what I mean? And that is lunacy in terms of the bigger development of the game. And whilst days like today are brilliant, in a kid's mind, come next Wednesday or Thursday, they'd have forgotten about it, and it's a case of what's going to be in vogue. And like, the greater development of the game, I think, lads, may be compromised by this. And when I say the greater development, I even think at club level, and again, I'm going back to it, there's a passiveness comes in because of the inactivity for that period of time. And the same goes for intercounty, that supporters and people who follow it, they become passive about it when it's not on the screens. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I really look how I just think even spread out the championship. The format is perfect, but just spread it out a little bit more, because some people are making the argument there in today's media that, like, that the 2 Joe McDonagh teams, and I'm not being disingenuous, most definitely not, especially when I'm an Offaly man in studio, but like the Joe McDonagh teams have operated at a completely different level, are now still in the championship at the expense of, you could argue Cork. So is there, do you know what I mean? I suppose what am I trying to get at the argument? If you left the 4th place Munster and Leinster into it, are you kind of, do you know what I mean? Are you rewarding their ability not to win the games? You are. So maybe just spread out the championship. But look, it was just incredible, man.
Who were the men who decided the game between Limerick and Cork, as far as you're concerned, Niall? And just for people who were hiding under a rock, it finished Limerick 325, Cork 130, 1 point in it.
Well, if you're to listen to the Sunday game last night, I watched it at 2:30 this morning, lads. I came home and
good man, that's the job.
And I'm going to blame, we had a lot of communions here, but no, like I said, nights like that are to be savoured inside Limerick. I actually came home, and if you're to listen to the Sunday game, I was, Jesus, lads, I was flabbergasted. And it's amazing, like, it does frame your opinion. And if you listen to Sunday games, it was James Owens who decided it, through his marginal calls, whatever else. Like, Limerick scored 2 points from frees. Cork scored 13 points from frees. Do you know what I mean? As in, so a part of me is there, people are talking about the referee. People who decided Burns. Burns was massive plays, made massive plays there after half-time. Really, really crucial plays. From a Limerick perspective, he was incredible. I think he probably was a standout in that side of it. Look, do you know what? As in, I suppose when you love the game, right, and I love the game, the one word that stood out to me above all the games yesterday was just resilience. All right, and I know you spoke there about Wexford, like the passion and the resilience of Wexford. It's like 1798 all over again. They came and they stood firm. You had the resilience of Waterford. Do you know what I mean? They were being slaughtered. Like, it was the bet of the week there. There were evens at an 8-point handicap. They were being slaughtered. Like, hold up a second, lads. The margins are tiny. And in Limerick's game yesterday, I would say that the resilience of Cork. Like, when have you seen Cork come back in recent years of games where the game was completely going away from them? They were 4 points down twice, came back to a point. They went 7 points down, came back to a point. Cork are back. The only difference is they just need a couple of more players. And when I say they're back, I mean there's spirit back in Cork. All right, they might be like the Cork of the 80s, who were totally dominating, but their spirit back. And look, the 20s final is on next Sunday. They've shown resilience in all those games. I've watched them twice, 3 times in person. They've shown resilience. They've gone back to traditional hurling. And if I'm to pick a Limerick man, I'm going to say Gearóid Hegarty, because again, we've all played sport at a level whereby when things are going against you for that length of time, and you're like, he's getting some grief, lads. He's getting grief off the pitch. He's getting phenomenal grief on the pitch from opposition. And I'm telling you, he's getting grief off referees because he is getting nothing. And again, I'm not trying to, again, maybe it sounds as if I'm kind of standing up for my own, but this guy is getting cleaved off the ball. It happened again Tipperary match. It happened again yesterday. He cannot win a free for love nor money. And that's in my head as an injustice. But yet, despite it all, he was so resilient. He played himself through it. And you know what? That's why we idolise our local players, because you know what? There's resilience sometimes needed in life, and it's in short supply sometimes in the modern generation. And I tell you one thing: when you look at what went on yesterday, that characteristic alone, that's why these players are kind of I suppose they influence society in the best way possible, more than any social media influencer or whatever else. That's real life influencing, and that to me was a standout. Just that resilience.
Just talk to me briefly, Niall, about Gearóid. Like, I think at the moment, if Gearóid touches anybody, he's nearly blown for a free against them. And can you just talk to me quickly about even, you know, the grief that he's getting locally in Limerick and rumours and various things swirling around in previous weeks?
Yeah, would you believe it, Mike? Maybe I'm living under a rock, and maybe that's kind of maybe farming and stuff. But I actually hadn't heard a lot of these so-called rumours. And
you and John Kiley both, he hadn't heard as well, apparently.
I honestly actually hadn't heard of it. And do you know what? The amazing thing about some of these is that they're coming from neighbouring counties. Do you know what I mean? There's
who you might be playing the Munster final now, and who your brother might be coaching.
Well, I can't comment on the Clare side, but it's actually it's coming out closer to a Tipp game. I hadn't.
Hold on, we hadn't heard those rumours.
Oh, do you know what I mean? The man there on the other side of the screen, I mean, look, he's sporting new colours today, but look, yeah. Well, look, Les, it was look again. There's he's a teacher, he's a pillar of society. You know what I mean? He's good people around him. Yeah, he doesn't endear himself at times. Okay, just maybe that's a byproduct sometimes. But no, man, like these guys they're really healthy, clean living people, and they've been those rumours are rumours, like, you know.
Well, the Tipsters nearly got what they were, nearly got more than they bargained for yesterday. They nearly ended up out of the championship.
Yeah, it was. But you know what? I actually, it's just something. And again, it's easy to be wise when the deed is done. But I didn't think Waterford would win it, but I thought they'd be fair close yesterday. And for one kind of, if you're to look at a reference point, like we have to look at that Clare Limerick Munster final as a reference point. That was the first time that a team probably at that point had gotten up to Limerick's level. All right, and I think for that Clare team, it's created a new baseline. It's like going to the next step of a video game, or next step of your Everest, whatever. That became their new baseline, which is why Clare are a far better team for it this year. And I think in Tipperary's case, like that's a very fresh Tipperary team in the main. I think they went to a place that they'd never been to before last Sunday. And I think if you're to use the Clare game as a reference point, it took Clare 10, 12 days to physically get over. Like, even anecdotally, talking to some of the boys who were playing that, they said it was like being in a car crash, not being sore. They said it was like being in a car crash. Do you know what I mean? So, like, I would imagine that there was probably Tipp players who were carrying fatigue in their bodies yesterday. And that's not to mention then the kind of mental, I won't say weakness, but you're set up for a fall. And then you have a team coming who are fresh and who have nothing to lose. So I don't think, I wouldn't be as, again, look, I'm only going on the clips of it, but I wouldn't be condemning Tipp now. And I think Tipp have a nice little route in. They can end up in All-Ireland semi-final very quickly with lessons learned, which for a young team, that's invaluable. Like, it's like, I think in Tipp's case, it's like having 2 seasons in one in championship terms, the way it's going to work out.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would have to look at the way things have worked out for Tipperary and say, like, fair enough, you can sort of twist any little thing to suit you if you want, but if Tipperary had to go and play Clare in 2 weeks' time, that'd be another bruising game. And, like, you lost Cathal Barrett and Jake Morris to the game, which was played yesterday. So that's taken the 2 fastest players out of your team. And no surprise, along with what you're saying, it felt like a car crash type thing, that Tipperary would be fairly dead on their feet. Now there's 3 weeks to try and get those lads right. You'd be hoping, there's talk of maybe Craig Morgan being back. He's another fast player if he can hit the ground running. I don't think Barry Heffernan's going to be right. But let's call a spade a spade. Tipperary should go to Tullamore and win. I don't think, Bernie, you're really going to question that. So it's 4 weeks until Tipperary will be put in a war. I mean, and I don't want to dismiss Offaly, Bernie. I genuinely don't. But realistically speaking, it should be 4 weeks until Tipperary in war again. So this actually might work out, okay in the long run. Niall, what do you think?
I'm not gonna disagree. As in Tullamore is the easiest place to go at the best of times, and I know Offaly will be licking their wounds again. Look, I agree with you in the sense that like 4 weeks, it's a long time. It's another championship within a championship, and I suppose while all this bloodbath is going on, and it's like it has been going on for the last 5 weeks, I still come back to Kilkenny and Galway coming in the other side, and especially Kilkenny when there's All Irelands like that to be won. Kilkenny tend to be the team that come in the back door, and like, do you know what I mean? There's still a lot of positives to what Kilkenny did yesterday. I know, just look, they're probably a bit porous at the back, but yeah, look, I just think. Would you say that is a Munster medal, the way this year's championship gone so far, does it turn out to be more valuable than All Ireland? Would Clare take
every year, Niall, every
Come
year.
out of it, will ya?
Every year.
I honestly, Mike, this is the card of a championship you're playing in there altogether. I was above and Galway there Saturday evening, and I said half of them didn't even know they'd a match on the Sunday. Like there's a total, like it's totally different. Again, it's like I don't know how you'd articulate it, but like this thing is a religion down here. Like it's a rite of passage. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, we love going to Croke Park because we get the train up to Dublin, or do you know what I mean? It's nice to stop in Junction 14 and get a snack box. But like there's nothing to us. Like there was a scene coming down the Ennis Road yesterday, and no different to going over the hill in Thurles. Going down to La Bombonera below Ennis last weekend. Do you know what I mean? Like, man, it's incredible, like what's happening. But again, to our detriment, we've discovered all over the years with the Munster champions, like, and that's even going back to the old system where there was less games. They paid the price for Munster championships down the road, like, So maybe if we played the All Ireland first in the Munster championship, probably where the GA would need to get it right, and it might solve that issue with Cork.
Can I just ask? And I'm going to come back on that. We've had it.
That's because you have no comeback.
We've G'd up Leinster well before this. I think if you listen to anyone down in Wexford Park yesterday, or Tom Dempsey or any of the lads, you'd realise that the passion is there. And don't tell me that passion doesn't ooze out in nearly every person going around Kilkenny as well. That's only naming two.
We have him on the run, Niall.
But quickly, Niall, I do want to ask you how well conditioned are Limerick? Like, if you look at Clare, were not the same team after the Munster final last year for the rest of the year. Tipperary were a shell of themselves yesterday. Kilkenny were even a shell of themselves in the 2019 All-Ireland final, having beaten Limerick. And yet, week on week, Limerick are the same team, despite all these wars that are thrown up against them. It seems to have a detrimental effect on every team they play, but they just seem to rock on. And it's the same Limerick, no matter whether they played last week, this week, and next week. It's unbelievable, really.
Jeez, Mike, the narrative can really swing in 24 hours. If I was here with you yesterday, we were saying Limerick were tired and teams were matching Limerick. Look, they're specimens, but I definitely think the teams have caught up they're nearly coming close on them with physicality, right? I definitely think it has taken 2 or 3 years. Limerick probably stole a march with a generational group of massive men. And I'm not going to just say this is down to everything that Limerick doing underage and blah, blah. Limerick came up with generation, like the size of Byrne, their half back line, half forward line. Look, it's been well documented. So yes, they're extremely, they're extremely well conditioned, but teams physically have gotten to their pitch. Teams tactically have gotten to their pitch. All right, so like I wouldn't. Again, it's just probably playing physically and tactically. Physically, you can get to that pitch. All right, you can do the work. You can bulk up. You can put on the timber. All right, aerobically, you can eventually get up to it, but it's not until you're thrust into it. All right, and again, and you can go with me on this one. When you go back to the old Kilkenny team, it was like that playing the old Kilkenny team. You thought you were fit, you thought you were good, you thought you had all these things done, and then you rocked on, and it just they belittled you in terms of how strong they were. All right, and I suppose the key difference to those elite teams and the teams coming, like Limerick are operating at that level. That is their base level, at what the All Black base level is. All right, so the problem is for teams that are chasing that, they're yo-yoing up and down, trying to get to that level, and I suppose it takes 3 or 4 years of those teams consistently being at that level to get to it. So I would honestly say at the moment that really competitive advantage that they would have had in previous seasons, I think that has leveled out, which is why yesterday, and again, if we go back to it, it's when Limerick went long yesterday, Limerick had the artillery to go along. Like Limerick, over the last few years, it's not that you'd have to say that they were king of the skies, because they didn't play a game that necessitated being king of the skies. Their game revolved around moving the ball through the middle third, whatever else. But yesterday, Limerick owned the skies in the second half, and when Limerick went long, traditional side into Aaron, there was rack and ruin there. So look, yeah, physically they are very strong, but I just think if they can just tweak it a little bit more the way they did yesterday, tactically go a little bit more direct, I think they now come with a whole new arrow, like, you know.
Just as well as that, Niall, like there's a cohort of warriors, I would say, particularly 5 or 6 players there that are really kind of keeping the show on the road. Like it's just this unwillingness to be beaten, almost, and defiance almost.
That word resilience. There's that word resilience there, Mike. It's just, look, like the way they can, again, it's the people there. All right, it's the people they are. It's the characteristics they have. Like, even when things start to slip there, nothing gets out of the camp. It shouldn't get out of the camp. Nothing gets out of the camp. They have a loyalty, an innateness, a love, a bond, a respect for themselves. All right, and again, that transpires in everything they do off the pitch. And by God, it transpires on the pitch. And look, there's a warmth in how they, like, look, I'm going to tell you, as a county, they have totally changed the complexion of how we view ourselves, the pride in which we take in our city, our county, what we have. Like, that comes from them, and they bring that. I suppose that word comes back to that respect and that resilience. And yeah, come here to me. It's like everything. Keano isn't in the best of form. All right, they adore him, and you see Burnsy there after the match, and he gives a couple of words. Keano went on, made a couple of small plays, a touch, a flick. That meant the world to them. Keano didn't have to go and score 5 points from play to get the respect of his teammates. It was that, you know what, when things were going against the grain, our best, our most charismatic hurler, he put his shoulder to the wheel, he made a hook, he got his arse in the way, he kicked it. That's just, you know what, again, it's like this phrase, just something extraordinary in the ordinary, and that is what I come back to them. Like, they're just extraordinary in how, and they are so ordinary. Like.
Just a word on Golan's cuteness, Niall. Like, to me, he bought the penalty. To me, he bought it. He made James Owens make a decision, and it's funny, about 30 seconds before that, he actually got caught for holding the hurl. To me, he did the exact same thing, but he made the referee make a decision in that instance.
I think the referee made a decision.
Come on, he died. Like, I think he's brilliant. He was unreal.
He didn't dive. He didn't
simulated.
dive.
Whatever way you want to put it. I think he's unbelievable, but he simulated. Come on.
Lads, I don't know. I think there's a lot more going on than that. And again, lads, look, I'm going to be cascaded. Sure, Limerick can watch their own, but again, like, our narrative is sold on what we see a lot of times in the Sunday game, all right? And if they had more time and they gave a different prognosis of it, there's things going on where lads have been, you know what I mean, they've been pulled and dragged off the ball. Yeah, there was 2 of them at it. Yeah, there was, but he ended up in the ground. Lads, Sean O'Donoghue put himself in a position whereby it was a call had to be made, and Golan put Sean O'Donoghue in a position where, and come here to me, is that not gamesmanship? Do you know what I mean? We go back to, even we were talking about rugby there earlier on. Munster played Leicester in a Heineken Cup final back in whatever it was, odd 4, odd 5, and kneel back the hand of God. You do what you do to win. And you know what? I wouldn't be apologising if I was Aaron Golan. And I also would say, in real time, I would have thought it was a penalty, and that's in real time I would have thought that. So, you know, again, nobody picked up on the free count going the other way. But look, that's a byproduct of being successful. You know what I mean? I just harshed on James Owens yesterday. I thought he was poor, and then that's been. I thought he was poor in a lot of what he pulled, and what he pulled, what he didn't pull. But look, how could you referee a game like that? And it's split moment decisions. So no,
it's because everybody hates you now, Niall. Everybody hates you now. They loved you in 2018. Now they're after you.
You're trying to get in our heads there, lads. You know what I mean? Like, you're trying to get in our heads. So, like, you want to kind of the demons to come out, the little Jake in our head to come out and upset us and throw us. And I tell you, it would have worked very quickly in old money here. Time on the part. Trust me. So we're kind of getting up on the shoulders of others here in terms of being brave. I can't say it's on the shoulders of what we did or what I did, but it's kind of sitting on the shoulders of giants we are at the moment. So we like the view where we are sitting on the shoulders. But again, lads, look. It's look, people talk as well about like Limerick 4 in a row, Limerick 5 in a row. Like, Kilkenny never had to go through the volume of these kind of games. I'm not saying they didn't go through these games. I'm not saying that they weren't brilliant, but just the repetitive volume of these games. Like, you're now going into game number 5 of what could ultimately be either a 7, 8, 9 game championship, with every game being an All-Ireland final. So, I'm watching Kilkenny from a distance. I just have this innate sense that Kilkenny are going to get it right at the right time. They found Tom Phelan, another good player, David Blanchfield, and I know they were beaten yesterday, so now Derek Ling is a stick to beat them with. They'll be coming with momentum there in 4 weeks' time.
What about Colin O'Neill? And like, he scored a goal yesterday, and it was just that little bit of patience once the ball was popped to him that he didn't allow himself to get hooked. He took that extra touch and popped it in. And obviously, he'd scored 5 against Tipperary last week as well. So as much as like the narrative is that Limerick are going to the well with the same players time after time after time, he's really kind of come of age now.
Yeah, he got a great goal. He's probably struggled a little bit yesterday now. He found yesterday a little bit tougher going, but he stayed working at it. And even a small thing like the ball for the penalty, like that came off Cahill, he was still getting out, he was still working. And like, do you know what? I suppose therein lies the development of players. All right, Colin O'Neill is probably one of the most prodigious underage talents we've had in a generation. It took him 2 or 3 years to get in there. And the nature of his game was, I won't say it was always about finishing, but the nature of his game is transition, whereby he's bought into the system, whereby he's working his ass off, he's getting back. He's like, even the pass that he gave that gave away a simple pointer, I think it was Hoggie got it. Darth Skibbon got it, a simple pass. Like, he was back in his own 30 yards. Like, that would have been, I won't say unheard of, but that's been coached into him. So, yeah, look, there is players coming. Like, could Colin Coughlin have given a little bit more yesterday? Yeah, Adam English, Shane O'Brien, there is guys coming. But again, John Kiley has his tried and tested, and do you know what I mean? I suppose they haven't let him down. He hasn't let them down, and that's another thing as well, lads. I suppose, like, do you know what I mean? It's so easy to come on these shows and Limerick need to switch, and Limerick need to X, Y, and Z. Like, would I have started Garrod Haggerty yesterday? No, because and I just said he may have just needed to be dropped yesterday. But John Kiley did start him, and John Kiley got the twist out of him that might have ultimately been the difference in winning the game. And that's all kudos to the manager, as well as, like, there's a lot been said about Paul Kinnerk's role as a coach. The manager obviously has to stand over these, and like, that's where John Kiley has his loyalty and his innate smartness has come to it. So yeah, yes, there is new guys and there is guys coming in. John still recognises that when you go to war, you need those 5 or 6 guys that you spoke about. So like, a word here as well, lads, for Cork, all right. And again, they really, really impressed me in terms of the manliness, their resilience. Like, you know what I mean? You have Hoggie and Shamie Harnedy. These boys are a long time on the road, lads. They're the 2 top performers in scorching heat. They defied everything that goes with it. Do you know what I mean? So I just think, look, Cork, chances are they have a handy game, the 20s final there, and at the
good man.
Coming to a 20s final, you know what I mean? They'll get a couple more out of them. And what I really like about Cork is that they're kind of gone back to old school a little bit. They've gone a lot more direct in how they're playing, and they're actually a lot more appealing team to watch. And I just think with 1 or 2 more players, I know Alan Connolly didn't feature a whole pile this year. I'm not quite sure why. Was he injured or whatever?
Injured, yeah.
Mark Coleman.
Mark Coleman. So, like, you start throwing in a couple of players, lads, because ultimately it's new blood makes the key difference when you have your setup right, and Cork's setup is right now, and as is Tips. And that's why, again, the achievement in whoever wins the Munster final in 2 weeks' time. Do you know what I mean? I don't know, maybe it's, again, cliche, but has there ever been a Munster Championship as competitive a side as this? It's been the best of the round robin series, and the round robin series has superseded that and that went before it. So, to me, this Munster medal is worth more than anyone's ever been worth.
Yeah, it's been a bloodbath so far. But again, like, back to Cork, like, they came from well behind to push teams on different days. The win against Waterford was the only exception to that, but they came well behind to push Tipperary all the way to the draw, came well behind, 8 points behind on Clare, came well behind, 7 or 8 points behind here, and only lost by a point. Like, Patrick Horgan played 80 minutes last week. So did Seamus Harnedy, if we include extra time. I didn't think that they'd be able to perform like this. 1-3 from playing 11 frees, Niall. That's some going for a man of 35. And, like, will we see him again next year? Why wouldn't we?
Why wouldn't we see him, yeah? The only people who write him off are people like us. And do you know what I mean? As in, one thing you'd always say about these older players is never put a finish line in front of you. And maybe that was the criticism that you'd have had sometimes of lads finishing before their time. Like, just because you've won a bad game in your 30s, everyone has to have a narrative. You're written off. And I also think, right, is this now the byproduct of, do you know what I mean, probably a full-on decade of proper conditioning, whereby, like, the key there for these lads is they haven't picked up major injuries. I can never remember Hoggie being badly injured or anything like that, in that sense. And I think once you're on the hamster wheel, as long as you don't get off it at any point, you'll stay hurling. Your longevity will be there for all to see. the thing probably that, as well as injury, I suppose, obviously the thing that would curtail the likes of these guys' careers is what they want to do maybe in family life, what they want to do in work life. But again, like Hoggie is still there looking for that elusive All-Ireland medal. And do you know what? Does that All-Ireland medal, is that really going to copper fasten his status? Is that really going to change who he was, whether he gets it or whether he doesn't get it? Like, do you know what I mean? Generations of opposition players have idolised him. Generations of young kids in Cork have idolised him. He's respected by all. Whether he has no All-Ireland medal or 10 All-Ireland medals, I don't think that's ever going to change it. So, yeah, I'd love to see him there again next year for what he brings. And look, come here, how many guys, when was the last fella who pulled the ball from that distance to the back of the net with such power? Do you know what I mean? It's he has all the skills of the game, and he's a legend, and he's a Cork legend. Whether he's, do you know what, would it nearly make him a bigger legend if he didn't have an All-Ireland medal? Sometimes that can nearly be the case when you're creating it in years to come, like, you know.
Yeah, Catnap says here, here, Shane patronising Cork now, as if they hadn't enough pain to deal with today.
Yeah, no, I'd echo what Niall said. I have to say, I've definitely questioned the spine maybe in Cork in recent years, and whether they, would really get their fingers dirty in when push came to shove in big championship games. And by God, did they in a couple of, like the last 3 games, they got down and dirty. And I think, I agree with Niall as well. They won't play for 9 months, which is not ideal, I'd say, for Pat Ryan, and not ideal for that squad. But I definitely think there's something brewing there. I put it to you this way: if Cork had won by a point yesterday, they realistically could have went on and won the All Ireland. No doubt in my mind, they realistically could have done that. But those are the fine margins. But I definitely think there's something brewing. They just look a little bit different under Pat Ryan.
Niall, do you think Cian Lynch can get his form back this year? Like, I think he's the best player in the country when he's fully right. But is it like, so we had Leo O'Connor on last week and he was saying maybe he put on too much muscle this year. Other people talking about maybe the injury toll. But like, can he get back to himself before the season is out?
I suppose, look, physically, he's obviously, you know what I mean, his shape, obviously, he was incredible, Nick, and he looks very, very strong. And just, like, again, there was times when he did really, really good things, and I just think he's playing himself through that form. Yeah, of course he can, because he's greatness personified, all right? And he is greatness personified, and, like, I just think it's going to take a little bit of time, but now it's, like, all he needs to do is get one good game behind him. Do you know what I mean? And I probably, if I was to be critical of the use of Keane in Tipperary game, I had no issue with him starting even, and he picked up his position in the inside line, but just let him there for a little bit and settle. Like, do you know what I mean? When you're not going well, you need to be in your familiar position. You need to be just ride it out. And sometimes, and we've all done it when we're over teams, you're trying to get the best out of somebody and you're moving them from pillar to post, and they're not settling anywhere, and then they kind of become uncomfortable looking in over the shoulder. So I would have thought in Keane's case, like, even that spell, just leave him at 11 for a while, leave him ride it out, because he's not going to be getting in the way. So I do think that he would get his form back. And look, all you need to do is reference Garrod. There we go again. 24 hours, Keane goes out and lights it up against Clare. And maybe now as well, that the pressure is, not that it was always on Keane's shoulders, but it's shifting to other people. Just going back, Michael, there, again about Pat Ryan, right? And he just comes across as a really good guy. He's Cork to the core. He's been with all those guys underage. Again, like, you're the vision of your manager. And I suppose when we look around, lads, again, we have situations where we have political parties and they have leaders who are dubious, and we see these people who are designed to run our society, and, do you know what I mean? You can just countless issues of hypocrisy, of do you know what I mean, allegations and everything else. Yet we look at the men who are leading their counties, and I often wonder, are these the men, at times, if we had them leading our country, we'd be a much better country for it. And Pat Ryan strikes me as one of these guys as well. Like, his lads play for him. You know it straight away. Do you know what I mean? And even going back to the Wexford situation, even looking to Lee Chin coming out in defence of Darren Egan, like any interchange I've ever had with Darren Egan, just a really, really good guy, really personal guy. And these guys, when they lose a game, they're hung, drawn and quartered. When they win a game, they're the world's best, nothing. But I just think the consistency of character in them, and it's why our game is what it is. It's why, do you know what I mean? It's why every parent would want their child playing hurling.
That's why this channel is called Our Game, because it's our game.
But that's it, lads, isn't it? It's you know what I mean? Like, you going today now, we going to school, and I meet lads who are like Paul there, Paul Flanagan, he'd be involved with Clare, and the crack is there, like, they're living in the middle of it. we're blessed, lads. We're just blessed. And again, like I said to you there, it gives you that sense. Like you take Offaly, all right, that 20s game there against Wexford, even obviously disappointment on Saturday, but like, man, the pride is back in that county as well. Like, do you know what I mean? For a county who prided itself on being so small, being a dual county, All Ireland winners in both. Again, look, robbed us from All Ireland in '94, but look, we've gotten over that. Like, I mean,
Oh yeah, clearly.
that's a couple of refereeing decisions there too. But do you know what I mean? Like, even Offaly has this mojo. Like, and you see kids wearing jerseys, they're going to matches. It's like, that's the best days you'll ever have in your life. And do you know what I mean? There's, as I said, and it's often phrased, like, people die happy when they see their counties win All Ireland. And I've seen it here in recent years where people have gone to their turn and reward, and that picture has been taken. Even a fella showed it to me yesterday of his father. A guy, I teach his young lad inside school, and he came up to thank me. He said it was the best teacher who was ever. So obviously the young lad was lying, but no. But he came over. He'd lost his father the week previous, and he just showed me a picture again from the 2018 All Ireland final. And it's, John, I just said, Jesus, this goes deeper than any game or any commentary on it. It always, and it's, you forget how many people are invested just because they mightn't be involved in a club, or they mightn't be over a team, or they mightn't have whatever else. How much people love, as John McMahon said, they love their county. And it's a huge part of where you are. And you know what? I'm sure there's expats around the world, Michael, who didn't get to see that game in person there, and they're tuning into every podcast because that's their link to home, and that's, do you know what I mean? That's why they just adore GA. And do you know what I mean? It's a wonderful day, and then suppose sunshine, and then to go with it, just where else do you want to be, like.
And Niall, you mentioned Paul Flanagan there, and I'm thinking, who's going to mark Aaron Golan in the Munster final now? Does Paul Flanagan come into picture, or does David McInerney go in full back, or what do you think Clare will do?
Conor Cleary's a big loss there. It's interesting, like, do you know what I mean? I know Shane Lamoury would have come on as well, cornerback, so they have a lot of options, and it'll be interesting to see how they react, because they probably took the nuclear option above in Croke Park last year in terms of replacing John Conlon. And I do think it places a little bit of pressure back on Clare as to who their choice is, because at the edge of the square with a kind of a predator like Golan there, you only get one chance to get it right. And do you know what I mean? There has been a couple of calls where they've kind of paid the price over the last 12 months, and the pressure will be on them to get it right. There's no doubting the way they have their team prepared. There's no doubting the spirit they brought him back. There's no doubting that they brought him back to the top table. But in terms of making a call, there will be huge pressure on that call that they make, because, as I said, there is no room for error. And not that they'll have sleepless nights, but there's a lot of thinking to be done in how they'll approach it. And one thing as well, okay, was Clare have had the best success against Limerick because they pushed up. Cork pushed up yesterday, which was a la the Clare model. They looked vulnerable at the back. And I'm telling you, when Limerick went back and went long, and that's where the reward was there. And I ain't so sure that Clare have anyone. David Mack probably the only one who might be able to contest some bit with Aaron Golan, but David Mack has been superb the last 2 years at wingback, and straight away you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So there will be a lot of sleepless nights there, because you're going to need a big man. And are you going to trust Adam Horgan? Brilliant hurler, super prospect, but he's only 19 years of age. Are you going to ask him to take on that role? Look, who knows? That's the call, and that's going to be in the Clare's management's eyes. And I just think just confirm it as well that the Clare Tipp Munster final is off. I just think there was around that where was it going to take place? It's actually off. So
we were so busy trying to figure out the venue, we had no time to hurl.
No, Shane, whatever about you giving out to me. I have cousins, I have a lot of relations in Tipp, and they won't be thanking me for that. They said we were on the receiving end of enough of beatings from them too, so I'll keep quiet after that.
Is there any county that people love to see down a bit more than Tipperary? Like, it's only a pity, Niall, that you didn't let Cork get another score, and Tipperary be left with their tails between their legs this morning.
Yeah, I don't know. It is, look, again, we're our neighbours. Thou shalt not slate our neighbours. I think that was the 11th commandment that Moses. So I have a couple of them cutting silage here beside me, so I better wait till the silage is in and picked up before we start slating before.
I know Kelly, being your cousin and all, involved with Waterford, would you have been chatting to him at all during the season, and obviously leading into that game?
Come across each other with family occasions, whatever else. I don't really go there, Shane, and no different to friends, like, you know, as in, it's the last thing you want to be talking about. And to be honest, the only time you'd be talking to him is to find out how Mullinahone are getting on. And like obviously Owen is involved at Waterford, but Jesus man, if there's a better club person in the country than Owen Kelly, he's still tagged out senior up. He's played a league game there recently, I think against Upperchurch. I saw him tagged out for it. He's over his own young lad Conan, a mighty prospect. Conan's 11 or 12. It's actually funny now. I'm not sure what time, but I was at a community games under 11 final here in UL there last year, and Mullinahone were playing Portumna, and Owen was on the line there from Mullinahone. And man, if you thought he was passionate on the pitch, oh lad, if you saw this guy going up and down the line, what it meant to him. And actually, Damien Hayes, I don't know, he had a son playing there. He was kind of wasn't directly involved with Portumna, and you see him going at it. And so you know what? That's just so. Look again, probably getting away from your question. Like as in these guys are involved in other counties, but there's nothing like their home club. And I would actually follow the club situation more now in terms of Mullinahone. I know that they've a lot of good prospects coming there at the moment as well. So yeah, look, it's strange to see him in a Waterford bid, but I actually haven't seen him really, to be honest, because he's kind of kept to the background. So maybe he's getting a few lessons from Davy to bring forward there in a couple of years' time again to Tipp.
Indeed. Michael, anything else to ask Niall? He's been great with his time.
No, the last thing I would say to you, Niall, we had Mark Foley on a couple of weeks ago, and the one thing he kept saying is that he didn't think Limerick were hitting the inside line often enough. And like, by God, the 3-4 passes outside the pitch are kind of gone now, aren't they? Like, they're getting that lovely diagonal ball in as quick as they can. Doesn't stick the whole time, but they're playing the percentages. They're putting the ball into those areas. Lovely diagonal ball. Darren O'Donovan, although he got 3 points yesterday, some of the ball he was putting in from potentially like shooting areas 80 yards out. Remember Peter Casey giving in a lovely ball as well. They're back playing. I would have said it was a tiny bit individualistic against Tipp at times. It was all about the team yesterday.
Yeah, against Tipperary, I suppose if they're to be critical of themselves, and it's not me, is that I suppose there was elements of their decision making, i.e. shot selection, that was poor. And again, I kind of go with Mark, as in, look, the way Limerick played when they were flooding bodies back, it has taken teams a couple of years to kind of go with it. And the thing about it is, okay, traditionally, what we were always told to do in all levels of GA was mind your house. All right, so when you're being dragged out the pitch and forwards are going down, you're going to have a situation where at times against Limerick, that teams at 2 guys back, then you saw the Clare model whereby they pushed up and just went for it. So obviously now that has become almost the modus operandi to beat Limerick, but definitely the modus operandi to compete with Limerick. And straight away, I think Limerick just realised, well, hold up a second now, the space is back there. We have boys inside, and it's just getting that transition of mindset that we don't have to work it all the way methodically. And I won't lie to you, Mike, I've seen it there even with a couple of underage games across the board. There was probably times when, as Limerick, we're very lucky in the sense that everything's been coordinated and we're all playing to the structure of the seniors, but there was times in a couple of underage games where they overplayed the ball, and teams now are so well coached against them at that level. And I just thought that other teams were getting far more success against us by going long on the converse when they're on the attack, and that we didn't go along when we were attacking. And it was actually something that, not being hypercritical, but it was something that I would have taken away from the underage games, that we just needed to kind of go route one a bit more, that it was transitioning back. And I know Shane Dowling referenced it there on the Saturday game about the long ball is back, but it is back in fashion in the sense of you have to have that mix of it. And I do think in Limerick's case, they have that artillery. Seamus Flanagan's a good man near. Obviously, Aaron is super near. So I do think that there will be a shift to that when we go to play Clare the next day.
And actually interesting, like Tipperary pushing up, trying to make sure that Barry Nash isn't going to dominate the game anymore. It's interesting how his role, like he's not been able to take over games the way he had been now.
He's not, but lads, sure, what did Limerick, like Limerick pulled 111 from midfield back yesterday. I know, okay, there's a penalty thrown into it and a free, but like you're talking about 10 points. So, like, Limerick are still getting forward in that sense. And yes, he obviously is the lad, they're pegging him. Like, look, they're picking up his runs on it. So, look, again, the thing has transitioned, but I still can't overemphasize the role of Nicky Quaid. All right, like, do you know what I mean? The nature of his puckouts is like you're still putting them through a pin for lads, you know. And I thought Limerick really ruled the roost in the air in the second half yesterday. I thought the first half, I thought Cork committed more bodies on the breaks. I thought Cork had a lot more success on the breaks. So again, like, I just think that the role of Nicky is huge in that. So look, lads, I don't know. It's as I said, it's been an unbelievable. There won't be much work done. There's not much work done today anyway, and definitely won't be much work done for the rest of the day the way things are here. And again, word up as well. I mean, you probably spoke about it. That Carlow Offaly game was just an immense game of hurling as well. And John, you just wonder, as I said, you're kind of half sad that a lot of these games, like we're not even at the 1st of June yet, and a lot of the best hurling of the year is behind us. And as I said, I just the truncated nature of it, it's too truncated in what it is. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not for the argument that it's super for club hurlers. I think long term, I think over a course of years, I think we might root to regret having such a gap. Do you know what I mean? Such a, I suppose, a microwave inter-county season, and to get that kind of a gap of that July month is pretty much a dead month here. That's June, July are pretty much dead here at club level. So I just wonder, maybe it doesn't need to be as truncated, and that we'd have more Sundays like we had yesterday.
Niall, thank you very much for joining us. Brilliant stuff, and tease up the rest of the championship nicely.
See you guys.
Cheers, Niall. Good man.
Yeah,
just
brilliant.
What Niall says there as well, like Waterford are out of the championship. What are we, 29th of May? And Waterford Club Championship, I don't think is starting till like the week after the All-Ireland final. So like that's
they know lads are going to go abroad and stuff like that. But do you know back in 1996, wasn't it that the time that Limerick absolutely hammered Cork 3-18 to 1-8 or something like that? That was Cork out of the championship on the 26th of May.
Oh yeah, and that's the way it was back then, and there was no kind of uproar. I suppose very few games were broadcast then as well. It's different. The whole landscape of it has changed, but just even you can hear the passion oozing now and Niall there. It sounded like it was an amazing day even when I was in Thurles yesterday, and I can't imagine what it was like down in the Gaelic grounds.
Yeah. Okay, so Hugh Paddy says, lads, a word for Neil McManus. I see a tweet saying yesterday could have been his last day in an Antrim jersey. Sad day if true. What a servant and gentleman to boot. And actually brilliant that he was able to get back from the injury. He limped off against Kilkenny a few weeks ago. Owen Hurley has a tweet for you. The Hoggie TJ is kind of unfair on Hoggie in my opinion. No Offaly to play against and rack up 20 points.
Yeah, I think he was kind of saying as well that the fact that obviously similar amount of scores got in championship, but the fact that TJ has 7 All-Irelands will always frame the conversation of who's better. I think the fact that what he's won at club level probably would play into that as well. But 2 unbelievable players. TJ is going to finish as the top scorer of all time at the end of this year, guaranteed anyway, because he's going to be playing more games than Hoggie. But I'm sure Hoggie will come back and it'll probably be going over and back again next year, even though TJ could have a bit of a buffer by the end of this year, you'd imagine.
Yeah, if you were to say how many of each of their scores were against Division 1 teams over the years, Hoggie's, his record in terms of scoring is far more impressive because he wasn't playing against Laois, Antrim, Westmeath and so on and so forth, including Offaly in those periods of time. We can't ignore that. His scoring record is far more impressive.
Oh, his scoring record is absolutely outstanding.
Far more impressive.
His scoring record is far more impressive. His body of work is not.
Yeah, two different topics.
Two different topics completely. But yeah, it's kind of mystifying when you look at Hoggie this year and him not getting very little game time last year. It's it's a bit puzzling to say the least, and I'm sure he was very proud over it, and that's why he made those comments before the league started this year. We probably didn't touch much on Antrim. Like everyone was talking about Westmeath and their performance and their comeback against Wexford the week before. I half fancied Antrim going into this game. I thought it was probably 60-40 in Antrim's favour.
You did actually, to be
fair. They were, they delivered a big performance, and history would suggest that Cusack Park is an awful place generally for teams to go to against Westmeath, particularly if it's a 50-50 game or Westmeath have a chance in the game. But Antrim Westmeath got back. I think they were up a point at half time. Antrim's 4 goals was the difference. And if Neil McManus does call it a day, isn't it great that they were able to keep their Leinster status? And where would they always talk about leaving the jersey in a better place. He's left the jersey in the Leinster Championship. They'd never held on to Leinster status before. The last time they came up and won the McDonagh, they were immediately relegated. So yeah, huge result for them.
Yeah, fantastic results. And after the game, Neil McMahon has said there's nothing to stop us driving on to another level. The most pleasurable thing about this journey has been the development of our young players. I've been the lucky one to be part of it. Darren Gleeson said, when you're playing inter-county, it's a journey of a lifetime as a player, and to be involved as a mentor is absolutely fantastic. We'll do everything in our power to keep this going. That's what I said to the lads at half-time. Keep this journey going for the county, and they've done that. They expressed themselves, they were freed up, and were magic at times in the second half. You'd feel terribly sorry for the Westmeath players, but they came back from 17 points down to beat Wexford, which was an incredible achievement, but they did concede 4-24 here. They were well beaten for a finish in this match. So I don't know if they can have too many complaints. Like, you look at Antrim's results, they lost by 4 points to Wexford, they drew with Dublin, they beat Westmeath. Like, they've very much done enough here to suggest that they should be playing Liam McCarthy next year.
No, they have, to be fair, on the balance of play, and ended up with 3 points. It's just, Shane, I'm going to have to go before half, but we need to chat for a couple of minutes here about Tipperary, because it's gas. If Tipperary had won the game, we wouldn't be 1 hour and 49 minutes into the show without mentioning them greatly. Like, I was down at the game, like, it was so obvious 5 minutes into the game that Tipp were in bother. And I don't think it was a mentality thing at all. I just think what Niall mentioned there, where I'm getting more at physically, is yes, teams can throw down to Limerick on a given day, but can they come back the next day and again and again and again? Limerick are able to do that every day, and that's the difference between them and everybody else at the moment. Clare can throw it down to them on a given day, but can they do it in the All-Ireland quarter-final last year after? Maybe, just about. They couldn't do it in the semi-final, and Tipperary not being able to, you can't make conditioning deficits in 3 or 4 months.
Well, this is something now, right? This was the first time that Tipperary didn't have a 2-week gap in between their matches in the Munster Championship, and it's made a decisive difference. So, like, you've made the point about Limerick, and it's a well-made point that they have kind of, I don't know, I suppose the what do they call it, the muscle memory, or whatever you want to say, that they have that physical conditioning that they can play these game after game after game. So I think Tipperary definitely suffered for that. But you can't ignore the amount of injuries that Tipperary have. They're digging so deep into the panel that people outside of Tipperary have never heard of some of the players that came on yesterday, or that have featured, occasionally in the last game or two. People in Tipperary know all these lads and know that they've got quality. But, like, number one, Tipperary were quite unlucky. Mark Keogh was pulled back in the lead up to that goal that was disallowed. Seamus Kennedy flicked it to the net. Could have been a penalty. I can see you're smirking already.
He's pulled back for a fair whack of steps.
No, he definitely did, but he was fouled even before that, so it could have been a free. And then at the other end, Reece Shelley made a mistake, and obviously you can't make a mistake like that. But also, to me, Desi Hutchinson flicked across the head of Brian O'Mara, so that should have been a disallowed goal. So that's a huge swing in a game where Tipperary are labouring but slowly reeling Waterford in, and they could have come back if that goal hadn't been allowed, and it shouldn't have been allowed, in my opinion. Should that goal have been allowed for Desi Hutchinson?
I actually, because I only watched it in real time, I didn't watch anything back on the TV, and I didn't notice it in real time, but that should have been dealt with twice. I would say that. It should have been dealt with twice. But I was going down through the Tipp team, and I was thinking, okay, who are the
pace?
Yeah, no, not even necessarily that. I was going down to the Tipp team and I was thinking, okay, who are the worker bees here? And I'm looking at Seamus Kennedy, Dan McCormick, Alan Tynan, Conor Stakelum, and they were all unable to get on the ball yesterday and have a really big impact on the game. They just looked legless. Even, like, with due respect to Bonner Matter, I couldn't believe he was still on the pitch after an hour. He just looked physically spent. That was all. Nothing. It's just he played 55 minutes before against the best team in the land, and I just thought he looked spent. But as you say there, you were going really deep into your reserves, deeper than Liam Cahill probably thought he would ever have to go. And you really need this break now, and you're lucky to have survived. The break will, from the way Cahill was talking, he's hopeful of having nearly everybody available. I think Jake Morris was in a sling, something with an AC joint, which is a ropey enough injury, but we did see Lee Chin playing with that injury. I think one positive probably that came out of it was, and like, the ball going in wasn't hectic, but Callan still looked plenty sharp enough, and Conor Bowe looked sharp enough off the bench, but they were fighting losing battles all over the pitch.
Well, how often did Waterford walk up the pitch? So that they basically went outside their own 45 for the puck outs, which, if you lose it, is highly risky, and I think it's cost them massively in other games. Didn't in this, because Tipperary were so leggy. Like, Waterford were very, very good, but let's be realistic about where Tipperary were in this game. But Waterford were able to walk the ball out, so Tipperary had 15 men outside the 45. Nobody could get near the man who was then carrying the ball out. He wasn't even forced to do a 1-2 or anything, and then would deliver a ball all the way to the inside forward line for the likes of the brilliant Patrick Fitzgerald, Desi Hutchinson, somebody like this. So Tipperary were getting no pressure anywhere. Where the ball was coming from, where it was being delivered in the middle, Tipperary were all at sea. And then when Tipperary were trying to work the ball out, it was just, okay, let's get the ball. Okay, let's drive it up and hit So you might have an extra man back in the Waterford defence. So they're sort of half marking, half a little bit zonal. So marking outside the man and then leave someone in the middle. and it was just hitting the guy who was on the outside waiting for the ball. Like, Tipp were absolutely dreadful, but they looked like a team dead on their feet. And I'm not just making excuses and shaping the narrative that this is actually working out lovely for Tipp, but it kind of is as well. But Tipp have only one win in the last 10 championship games. That can't be ignored either.
Yeah, and Waterford second round robin win in 16, and the two of them are against Tipperary, which is ironic. Cattle been the manager for one, and Cattle been the losing manager for the other. It was just there was a lack of energy. Tipp weren't able to break the tackle at all. They didn't seem to. They just seemed to be. They looked kind of punch struck almost from the off. They started. You know, when you're very stiff and sore, lethargic going into a game, you can get into your gear in the second half. Noel McGrath ended up on the freeze. Garrod O'Connor went off with an ankle injury. I think he rolled his ankle. They gave a fair casualty list. At the moment, we're looking at Garrod O'Connor, Cottle Barrett, Jake Morris. I think Niall O'Mara was back on the squad yesterday. I'd say there was probably a couple others that are fairly battered and bruised today as well. Liam Cattle kind of basically had no problem saying that it was a hammering. He also took fair umbrage to some comments that Davy had made about emotional baggage that Waterford had carrying over from last year, and didn't think it was a fair comment. And to be honest, it's an absolutely ridiculous comment, because like, where was all the emotional baggage of one loss to Clare last year? Where's all the emotional, what's the opposite of baggage? What's the positive of baggage of the 2.5 years before that? You know, all that positive muscle memory of getting to an All-Ireland final, beating Kilkenny, beating Tipp in championship, beating Clare in championship, getting to a semi-final the year after, winning a league. So I just can't buy that at all. But there, you know, there's no point getting away from it. You're lucky probably to be in the position that you are. And like, I was amazed as well. You were going for goals deep into injury time yesterday from positions that were not goal-scoring positions. When
a point or two would have done.
Yeah. Oh, like, fine margins. You're beaten by, if you were beaten by 5 or more, or was it 5 or less? You needed to get down to 4. And I couldn't believe what I was looking like. Lads forcing goal chances. You're blessed that you live to fight another day.
Oh, look, I was sweating. I had the 2 screens on at the one time. I was up at Croke Park, and I had Limerick Cork up on the TV, and I had GA go flying on the laptop as well. And hey, a word on Patrick Fitzgerald. I mean, this guy should have been starting all year. He is magic. Some of his touches are unbelievable. He's just got star quality written all over him.
Yeah, he's a brilliant player. And isn't he a big lad for his age?
Like, he takes some punishment.
Yeah, he is physically a big lad. Like, and you know, Desi's probably a good bit slighter, and that. It was great to see the two of them in there, because they've been in there at club level with Ballygunner and been so dangerous. And they were like, while Billy Nolan was playing sweeper, and like I have to say, like, that was a mad call in my head, and it worked splendidly.
Would it work in other games, or a fresher tip? Or look, Watford were brilliant, but would it work in other games?
No, that's a fair point, totally, because it's, you know, in other games, I think the pace would have been an awful lot higher than yesterday. Yesterday was pedestrian enough from a Tipp point of view. Waterford played 100 miles an hour. I couldn't believe that Tipp allowed Waterford to puck out at times as well. Like, I remember looking at Caleb Lyons standing at 65, and you could see Liam Cattle shouting in. He was standing by himself. It was amazing to see that Tipp had left some of Waterford's main ball carriers free from puckouts. It was a sign of maybe what Waterford can do going forward, and it was probably a bit of a reality check for Tipp, but they have time to get to kind of circle the wagons and get a lot of boys back onto the field again.
Yeah, Owen Hurley says, lads, a week is plenty of time to recover. It's a game of hurling, not the Battle of the Gettysburg. We can't talk up how athletic our players are on one hand and then say one game a week is too much for them. You want to tip away there? I'll just run through the last of the results anyway.
Some week of hurling, Shane, in closing, wasn't it? Absolutely unbelievable. And hopefully the rest of the championship will be another big treat for us as well.
Yeah, the shame is that so much of it is just horsed together, and we can't just cut the league in half and let us enjoy the championship a little bit more by spreading it out a small bit. Games every 2 weeks would do us nicely. Right, Michael, we'll chat to you later on. I'll go through the last of what's flying here. By the way, Seamus Callanan scored 3 points in that game, and we were talking about TJ Reid and Patrick Horgan earlier about being 2 of the modern greats. I mean, Callanan has scored 39 championship goals, and absolutely every one of them has come from play during that time. So I feel like sometimes that is forgotten. There was plenty of good football on over the weekend as well. Also, it must be pointed out. Derry had a draw 14 points apiece, but Monaghan wasn't exactly a cracker there. But for Monaghan, Conor McManus and Jack McCarron, they only came on. They both started the last time out against Derry. and they were only on late. And I think afterwards, the manager Vinnie Corey says you have to balance everything. We're in the unfortunate position that we only get a week to prepare. So you have to manage all that. That's to the next game, I should say. We need players fresh next weekend as well as this weekend. So you have to balance out the whole thing. And we'll be seeing a lot more of these boys as the year goes on. I was looking at some of the tweets that were flying around last night from the GA league tables. I'll just bring it up on screen here. I thought this was a good one. Round 1 of the Sam Maguire Cup had an average winning margin of 2 points across 8 games, the largest of which were the wins by Mayo and Donegal over Kerry and Clare. Incidentally, both were away. There were also 3 draws, only 4 goals scored, an average of 31 scores per matches. The 8 home teams only picked up a total of 7 points. Also, 7 teams scored 14 points. The quality of forward play can be debated, and it should be, but it's all been very even so far, and that is the point of this structure. I think that was a very good tweet there from GA League Tables. And I think it's something that we could be looking at in terms of the hurling as well, that if we could get all the hurling teams, Leinster and Munster, together in one big group, that would actually be very, I've said it before, I'd like to see the Munster teams all play off each other in the Munster Championship, and then put the two, and Leinster teams, and then kind of put the 2 tables together after that, and let everybody play everyone every year, because just like I say with the Premier League, imagine if Man City and Liverpool didn't play each other for 4 years. Ridiculous. And did Armagh and Derry both suffer post-Ulster final hangovers? Obviously, Derry drawn with Monaghan and they're close rivals, but Armagh, they only beat Westmeath 113 to 112. Not exactly the most convincing performance there, and Conor Turbett with the crucial goal late on. Cork beat Louth 119 to 117. Brian Hurley scored 8 points. Barry O'Driscoll scored 1-1. Sam Mulroy scored 8 points, 4 of those from play. Liam Jackson got the goal. And then Dublin beating Roscommon. So this was drawing with Roscommon. That was 111 to 14 points. And I'd love people to get their comments in there in terms of where football is going, because there was a sight in the first half of Dublin chasing shadows as Roscommon kept the ball for almost 6 minutes before scoring a point. And Davy Burke was talking afterwards, and this was just the general flow of the game. And I think that this particular incident tied in with it. He goes, I'm not sure Dublin like other teams controlling the play. I think Kildare, this was in the Leinster semi-final, 14 points to 12, gave everyone the template there a few weeks ago and how maybe to frustrate them. I thought we might be able to take that on another step, and we did for a while. Louth gave us all an exhibition on what not to do. Obviously, Louth were absolutely filleted in that final. Desi Farrell said after the game, of course, the jury is still out on where we're all really at. You need those types of challenges and those types of games, particularly ones like that go right down to the wire, where you're presented with all kinds of scenarios. We've had 2 different decent performances all year, if we're being frank about it. Maybe 3. Operating in Division 2 doesn't tell you an awful lot. So just in terms of the injuries for Dublin, they're already without Jack McCaffrey and Owen Merchant. You're also looking at the fitness of Davy Byrne and All-Star Kieran Kilkenny, 6-time All-Star, and there's only a 6-day turnaround as well. Let's see. Also, when asked about Davy Byrne's injury afterwards, he goes, Davies is a muscle, I think. Obviously, we've our medical team running a battery of tests now at the minute, so we'll know more later in the evening. Cormac Costello scored 7 points. John Small with the goal. Conor Callahan and Sean Bugler with 2 points each. Kieran Murtagh, he'd scored 5 for Roscommon. Diarmid, his brother, scored 3, including 2 frees. And Kieran Lennon scored a couple of points as well. I just saw a tweet from, I think it was Vinnie Murphy after the game. I'll just bring it up here. And he says, Dubs versus Roscommon, hard to know where Dublin are at now. Roscommon are well drilled, but the Dubs looked off the pace. We stood off them, ? So he obviously didn't understand that. You can't do that against any Division 1 team. We also had no width, and as a result, they found it easy to defend most of the time. Sean Buckley replied saying, Vinny, please help us make sense of what in the name of Jesus went on today. Confidence looked shot, tempo, execution, decision-making was off. And Vinny adds in, a mix of the first division team we played this year, along with another change in style. No direct ball into Con, no pressure on the ball until the second half. These 3 games are only shadow boxing and a fundraiser for the GA. No clear favourite for Sam. David Kelly, an independent journalist, says also no pace from the half-back. Vinny Merchant and Jack absence key. Vinny says that was missing all right. Croke Park seem to want to empty people's pockets in support of their teams. People only have a finite amount of money that they will spend any given year. 30k at a double header with both Dublin teams 10 or 15 years ago. Some league games would have got that. So comments are flying in and keep them coming. ML89 says 4 Connacht teams unbeaten so far in the group stages. It's probably the highest quality province. Feel New York and London in it gives it a bit of undue stick, especially when probably no worse than some of the Munster Leinster teams. Joe Butler says, well done guys, good balanced show this week. Got to go now. Park Keeshan, you'd forget other sports existed this weekend. Only found out this morning that Everton stayed up. Couldn't be watching soccer with the GA that was on. I see a comment here from P-Well74 in terms of Tipperary, that Cahill will run Tipperary into the ground. Now, Porter said, Westmeath impressed yesterday, unlucky after watching highlights. Irish Tommy adds that Tipperary players are not fit enough or soft in the head if they can't play 2 Sundays in a row. Porter says, Jesus, hurlers on the ditch. And Barry John Maher, this is obviously in reference to what Niall Moran said earlier about Limerick not getting that many scores from frees. Just maybe Cork got so many frees because of Limerick's ill discipline. Seems obvious to me. So we've had a huge amount on the show today. Just a reminder that if you need a club fundraiser, ourgame.ie is the place to do it. Events at ourgame.ie. Also, if you want to host a coaching clinic, email us at the same spot. Like, comment, and share to help us grow our game. We're looking to do that all the time. And please do consider going to orgaretro.com and use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. There's a huge band of different jerseys and zip-up tops and the whole lot that you can buy there. Also, you get the audio podcast at patreon.com/OurGame. It's been an absolutely packed show. Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you again on Thursday.